I'm just, I'm just sorry, Brother Hamza. I'm just playing around with the.
Excellent.
Who is that masked man?
I'm just playing around with these video filters. You know, this is the first time I play with it, but this looks sharp, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. You look like a bandit. You know?
Now the question is, how can I get rid of it? I think I can. There you go. Okay.
Make sure that's not permanent.
No.
Okay, so salam everyone. I see quite a few people here. Sister Fatima, assalamu alaikum. Brother Muhammad Shafiq, Alan, Talib, Omar, of course we're here. Tariq, Zafallah Khan, and all. Greetings to you all, and welcome again to another session of our Qur'an study group. Today is March 26, 2023. Nice sunny day here in New York. Temperature is going to be up hopefully around 60 degrees from a couple of days ago when it was almost time to cut the heat back on. Before we go into today's program, let me just re-announce the Tawheed conference that we are planning for this year, June 8th, from June 8th to the 11th, I believe it is, Thursday to Sunday, and I think we have a hotel location. It's the hotels. What is this? Sonesta Select Columbia. I think you see the picture on the screen, so you can get that later on, that information there. We'll be there from Thursday and checking out on Sunday. Hopefully we'll have a great conference again this year. So I'm not going to keep everybody waiting. We're looking forward to this highly anticipated lecture from our good brother, Omar. And so without any further ado, let's get him started. Let's bring him on and let's give him all the time he needs and give him the attention that's required. Make notes and be prepared to ask questions. Brother Omar, assalamu alaikum, you have the mic.
Assalamu alaikum, brother Hamza. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Again, so kind of you to give me the opportunity to share the ideas or the thoughts or the knowledge, if I may say that I have. The idea of this program, it came about by after you actually sent me a few videos to watch, and I was on travel. And I thought that it is really high time to go a bit deeper in an analytical way, in a careful analytical way, into this concept of hadith supremacy. Now, in the past, we wanted to focus, and we always focus, of course, on the Mus'haf, i.e. the Qur'an, as far as the source for our religion. However, there is a lot of pressure, which is inescapable. You find it everywhere, wherever you go, where the parallel religion, i.e. what is called the Hadith and the Sunnah, is being thrusted upon us in a very forceful way, and sometimes convoluted with concepts that many people are afraid to get into for fear of being ridiculed, that you're not aware of what one is talking about. So I think it's while I think for a student of religion, for a student of Islam, in my opinion, this is a complete distraction, to go into anything that is outside the Mus'haf. However, the thrust by which I want to be careful in using these terms, but I will say that those who who have shirk, or they make shirk by associating others with Allah, represent a dominant and a strong force. Now, I'm not going to accuse anyone of kufr or shirk. I'm not. Okay, we're not into that practice. However, Allah is clear about when He states that anyone who uses commands from other than Allah has made shirk. Okay, so it's a serious, very serious matter. So again, I'm going to level accusations. We're not into that practice. We're not going even to label anyone who's muttaqi or not muttaqi, but we have guidance, and we need to stick to this guidance. Strictly stick to this guidance. If we have a debate over how to interpret that guidance, that's fine, be it. We're humans, we can err. But to associate, when Allah says, وَلَا يُشْرِكْ فِي حُكْمِهِ أَحَدًا, very powerful. I think this is in Surah Al-Kahf, at the end of a verse, وَلَا يُشْرِكْ فِي حُكْمِهِ أَحَدًا. No one can have the privilege of participating in a hukum with Allah. No one, including prophets and messengers. Okay, so the matter is serious. So that's why, thanks to Brother Hamza, he agreed on talking about how this issue of hadith supremacy, and how do they come about the arguments. I'm going to take special cases and go into their methodology to conclude. I'll give you the conclusion from right now, from the very beginning, is that this is a completely contradictory body of knowledge that is full of falsehoods and opinions, and it doesn't come close to what one may call a science. It's really a travesty to call this body of knowledge, or this body of musings, or this body of opinions, or this body of hearsay is science. And surprisingly, many have gotten away with this. Even scholars in major Western universities, they are not being held accountable for using expressions or terminologies that their own universities have different definitions of. We can get into some details later on. So, all right. So I'm not going to talk today about the irrelevance of hadith to religion. I've covered that. We've covered that before. I've covered that extensively in other talks. In other words, meaning that the prophet, whatever the prophet said cannot be taken as religion. Whatever the Rasul said is taken as a religion, and whatever the Rasul said is embodied in the message itself. So that had been covered, extensively, and I'm not going to talk about that, because if one were to attack the foundations of the parallel religion, one has to go to that discussion. Okay. However, there's a preponderance of attacks, of information, of pressure that gives the impression to many people that there is a sound methodology or a science behind this body that they call hadith. So that's number one. And the second is that you see, I'm not going here to, the hadith is based on the concept of the authenticity of the transmission, and why I'm saying, one has to go back to the earlier discussions if one wants to understand the relevance of hadith, not the methodology that they use. There's a difference. Because the transmission, the authenticity of the transmission of something, or the validity of the transmission chain, is not a proof that something need to be included in the religion. You see, we have to separate the two, okay? Because this argument had been used sometimes innocently and sometimes mischievously to say that, well, how do you believe in the Mus'haf? You know, the Mus'haf came through a good chain of transmission, you know? So in other words, the hidden argument is that we should believe in the Mus'haf because they were honest people who transmitted this book. Well, suppose this book is not correct. It came from the devil, and honest people transmitted it through 1400 years. Does that mean that I believe in it, or I take it as a religion? Amazing. I mean, very, very, very preposterous, really, arguments. But again, okay, so if we look at now, so people talk about ulum. I'm gonna throw some terms and I will translate them, and this is for the purpose, in my opinion, to strengthen our understanding of this subject, rather than to be oblivious to it, rather than to say, oh wow, there's something that I don't know. There could be some truth to what the framers of the parallel religion have been doing, you know. So now it's just like when you think about physics, you know, if someone is telling you I'm a physicist, and then you inquire more, you think that this person is just a magician, he's not a physician. Okay, you look into the methodology that person is doing. So methodology and scientific methodology, in fact, science is defined by its methodology. I believe so. Science is defined by a methodology, okay? And to claim that the parallel religion is based on sound scientific methodological basis is false, as we will show. And I hope you will be convinced by that. Now, I have some files that I'm going to open and refer to as we speak that I prepared. For some reason, my computer today is slow, but it is it's responsive. Okay, so the first thing that that is worthy of noticing is that Allah talks to Muhammad, the messenger, talks to him directly in the Mus'haf, and tells him that there are people around you, and I'll refer to the verse. It's 9:101. 9:101. Allah is addressing the messenger and or the prophet. I cannot be for certain here because I'm not looking at the big context, and the people around him, and he's telling him, and he's telling them, and amongst you from the Arab. By the way, Arab does not mean Bedouins. Some people take Arab as meaning Bedouins. No, it doesn't. Okay, Arab doesn't mean Bedouins. Arab means someone who is claiming to be authentic. Okay, but that's not our subject here. So Allah is addressing the community, saying, around you there are hypocrites, and from the people of Medina, people who have been used to hypocrisy. They have gotten used to hypocrisy. This is the key part of the verse. لا تعلمهم. You are not aware of them. نحن نعلمهم. We are aware of them. And the rest of the verse, we will torture them twice, the end of the verse. But what matters to us in this very important verse, very strong, is that Allah is telling the Prophet and the people around him, you don't know who are the hypocrites around you. So clearly there are hypocrites around him, and clearly, according to the definition of the Sunnah framers, those were Sahaba. Very obvious. So some of the Sahaba were hypocrites, okay? In other words, not to be trusted. They were not trustworthy, okay? So now let's look at one of the verse, a hadith, and I'll come to the methodology later on, but I want to warm up the subject with I want to share with you how the ahadith are made implicitly in a very, very devious way to be superior over the Mus'haf. Okay. Now, so a very important verse is the verse of the well. You know, when someone is about to die, Allah is saying, كتب عليكم إذا حضر أحدكم. Sorry, this is Baqarah 2180. كتب عليكم. I'm going to leave kutiba untranslated because we discussed it before. It means always kutiba. Whenever kutiba is used, it means there are multiple possibilities, at least two possibilities. It is not farada. Big difference. It's not farada, it's kutiba. Okay. And when I was recently listening to one of the so-called shuyukh, you know, a Salafi sheikh, he said farada, it's the same thing, you know, kutiba means farada. No, it doesn't mean farada. Absolutely. Huge, huge difference. So kutiba alaykum idha hadara ahdakum al-maut. It was kutiba on you if some of you approach death. If look, in Arabic, either means something will happen for sure, because we know that everyone will die. I mean, look at the precision of the Mus'haf. It's amazing. Either hadara ahdakum al-maut. When the time of death comes to someone. I think either the best way to translate either when, which is a bit interesting. In taraka khayran, if. Now the other if, in is if, because there's a possibility it happens or it doesn't happen. If he or she is leaving behind khayran. Khayran implies, by looking at the Mus'haf elsewhere, could imply land behind, money behind, property, whatever, gold, khayran, something that is of benefit, okay? This is what is kutiba. Al-wasiyya, the will. So Allah is suggesting, and this is the best way I look at kataba. Kataba is a suggest. Allah is suggesting something, not commanding. Kutiba, okay? In taraka khayran al-wasiyya. So Allah is basically suggesting that if we are approaching death, then we should write a will. Okay, now to whom? للوالدين والأقربين. للوالدين والأقربين. Okay, بالمعروف, for the biological parents and the close relatives. أقربين is relatives. Okay, أقربين is relatives. بالمعروف. بالمعروف means using the standards of those days, the standards of the community, what is known, what is acceptable, what is common. Okay. حقا على المتقين. It is truthfully on the muttaqin. I prefer not to go into this because I haven't really analyzed this phrase much, but that's not our concern here. Our concern is that Allah is saying in Surah 180, Baqarah 180, something. He's suggesting that before we die, we write a will. For who? وصية الوالدين والأقربين, which is very interesting, by the way, very interesting. I don't want to make this as a side comment. It's that Allah is saying al-wasiyya, He is suggesting that we write a wasiyya lil-walidaini wal-aqrabayn. Notice, there's no one else. The farmer is not there. The gardener is not there. The office friend is not there. Someone who lives in Shanghai is not there. So this is something that I thought about it recently, and I never thought about it before because people have never never excluded those entities that are excluded in the verse. But anyways, sorry, I don't mean to confuse the subject. I will focus on one thing, is that Allah is suggesting that we write a will. Now, there comes a hadith. There comes a hadith that the Sunni framers champion so much. لا وصية لوارث. A person who naturally inherits, is a natural heir, cannot be bequeathed through the will. Interesting. Wait a minute. I mean, this throws everything upside down, right? I mean, on the one hand, Allah is saying, write a will before you die. And he said, لِلْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ. Two entities or two groups that are natural heirs, as we will see in the following verse, in the verse, the famous Nisa verse 4:11. But we'll come to that in a second. But before we come to that verse, Allah is saying, look, I suggest you do something, and the hadith is completely saying don't. Interesting. Now what to believe? Okay, now in order to make that, look, in order to make this verse, this hadith supreme over the verse 180, okay, they said that 411, the hadith framers said that 411 actually came to nullify 180. Now let's look at 411. يوصيكم الله في أولادكم للذكر مثل حظ الأنثيين. يوصيكم الله. Allah has in your offsprings, okay, a wasiyah. Allah, yusikum Allah. This is Allah's wasiyah, Allah's will. Okay. للذكر مثل حظ الأنثيين. I don't want to parse these little minute details of this. I want to look at the big part of this, the big picture that this verse gives us. He goes on, Allah, فإن كن نساء فوق اثنتين, and if they were women beyond 2 and so on. And then at the end of the first part of the verse, Allah says, من بعد وصية يوصى بها أو دين. In other words, you make this distribution between the natural heirs, between the kids, the husband, the wife, and so forth, after the wasiyah that had been made, or dain, or a loan, is taken care of. I mean, you see, there's no, I hope everybody is following this. There's no contradiction between the two. There's none. Where is the contradiction? You know, Allah is first saying in the first verse that I suggest that you write a will, okay, for the parents, the biological parents, and the close relative. Okay, now the other verse, Allah is asking to distribute money according to his wasiyah, okay? So it doesn't take a brain that Allah's wasiyah kicks in after the first wasiyah. In fact, it is stated explicitly, min ba'di, in this verse, min ba'di, after you take care of the wasiyah that was made and the loan. It's a logical, everything fits logically, beautifully. No cause for any concern, okay? So where does, look, There's no contradiction. So how does this hadith, to validate the hadith, to make the hadith supreme, they said that the second verse abrogated the first one. Okay. The interesting thing is that there was no consensus on this. Look, there's no consensus on that, on whether the second one abrogated the first one or not. So some so-called scholars, I like to call them priests, or kahana. Kahana is the best, kahana. Okay, priest, I don't want to look as if I'm making fun of people of other religions, Christians, no, it's not. But kahana is the perfect way to refer to these people. Kahana, I defined it as the guardians of the temple. What temple? That's a different story. Like in the story of Yusuf, if anybody of you saw the movie, they were idol worshippers, and there were those kahana guarding the temple, guarding their privilege. So anyway, so there were those kahana at the 1st century of Islam who came up with this concept that the hadith is supreme over the Quran. And they said it just like that. They said it explicitly. Al-Awza'i is one of them, who's highly respected, and others. There are other names, Ad-Daraqutni, and others are Ad-Darami. Sorry, Ad-Darami is one of them. Those are, big names that lived in towards the end of the 1st century Hijri. So there was no consensus that the second one, I don't want to belabor this too much because I want to go into the analysis, how they justify it even further. So there's no consensus that the second one nullified or abrogated, let alone this very, very mischievous concept of abrogation, which I called it fraud against God in my book. It's literally fraud. So the concept of abrogation is a very elusive, very mercurial, very mischievous concept where people did not understand not to reconcile. They did not understand two verses. They said one is abrogating the other one, and they got away with it. And then someone brought this hadith from nowhere, and instead of saying, wait a minute, this hadith strictly contradicts the Mus'haf, they said, no. Let's try to work around it such that the hadith stands supreme. Eventually, the hadith is supreme. Now, it's interesting. Later on, I discovered this while I was researching this topic, that they even added an addendum to this hadith. Now, for instance, if you go to Egypt, by the way, I talked to some people, Muslims, and I said, do you know so-and-so that you cannot bequeath, write a will to one of your natural heirs? They said, what? No, I never heard of it. I said, but all the madhahib have it, all the 4 madhahib. In fact, according to the Egyptian law, Egyptian Sharia law that applies to those who want to follow the Sharia in Egypt, there is an addendum to this hadith that I just mentioned, La wasiyata liwarith, except, this is the addendum, which is very interesting, except that the natural heirs agree to this will. Interesting. Okay. In other words, it's okay to bequeath something to your kids, however, to someone more money than the others, but the others have to approve. Very interesting. So there are different layers, different addendums or addenda, that all of them contradict the Mus'haf. Now, let me go and show you. This is very important because it is interesting to see the arguments that are used, and I want you to see, here we go, okay? So if you look at if you go and search on the internet, how do you reconcile the two, okay? You'll find, actually, if you just put try to put some keywords related to what we're doing, you will find a lot of discussion because people trying to justify this hadith. Now, Okay, look at this. Now let's listen to this very carefully. To justify that the first verse is gone, is nullified, okay? And by the way, this is the core of the Hadith methodology that they call science. When the first verse, okay, was revealed according to the Hadith framers, Allah gave every deserving person his share. Interesting, okay? But then the other verse was revealed because Allah decided, okay, Allah has already given every deserving person his share. I'm translating this almost verbatim, okay? Therefore, there's no more will for the natural inheritor or the heirs, the natural heirs. And this is a hadith, by the way. This is another hadith that they framed. إِنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ أَعْطَى كُلَّ ذِي حَقٍّ حَقَّهُ. That Allah has given every deserving person his share. Therefore, there's no will to be given after that. I mean, I don't know if that makes sense to anyone who's listening, okay? Now, then it is really interesting. The question is, the core question is, who decided or who came up with the big claim that this verse was, the second verse abrogated the first? Very logical question, okay? Guess what? We have no information, absolutely. Qila, look, qila, it was said. This is science. This is a scientific methodology. Qila, you know, just trust me that I know someone has said that. I mean, the only purpose that the messenger was asked to do was to convey the message. وَمَا عَلَى الرَّسُولِ إِلَّا. It did not ask him to explain it. Didn't. وَمَا عَلَى الرَّسُولِ إِلَّا. البلاغ mean I bring something to you, like I have a balag from the government sends me to give you a letter. I have no idea what's in the letter. I may or I may not. I'm done. Thanks. Okay. So this is the purpose. Okay. So it's a very serious task that the Prophet was entrusted with. Very, very serious. So if one verse were to nullify another verse, he would have told us. I mean, why didn't he tell us? Why didn't he leave it for the musings? And why did he leave that gap to discredit this entire book? To discredit, okay? Because, you know, it's up to me to decide which one is abrogated and which is not. But even they did not have the courage to say that the Prophet, even they did not have the courage to fabricate a hadith to say the Prophet said this verse is nullified. Okay, so now I want to say a few things about this. Okay, they insist, you know, look, so now does this verse, are we discussing something theoretical or theological? Not at all. Not at all. We're discussing something extremely important that affects our economy in a drastic way. You see, Allah, I mean, of course, there are deep concepts invoked here, but Allah gives us the right to decide what we want to do with our money. Okay, but it's interesting that it is fixed to two al-wasiyah to two groups, two entities. Okay, this is a deeper question that I never seen anyone discussing. If you go to these Muslim charities who make a lot of money from people's donations and who love people to write wills, you see that they go way beyond that. Okay, and no one asked them any question. Okay, so let me just mention a hadith that was also framed. They use the word صناعة al-hadith. It's very interesting. صناعة al-hadith. صناعة al-hadith means to create or fabricate or to come up with a lie. صناعة al-hadith, صناعة al-hadith. So Sahih al-Bukhari has, by the way, the hadith that I said earlier is not in Sahih al-Bukhari. And I found it in at-Tirmidhi. At-Tirmidhi is classified to be one of the 6 Sahih. Okay. Now, Sahih means it's a technical term. It does not mean it's true. It's a technical term. Okay. And by the way, what is Sahih for al-Bukhari is not Sahih for Muslim. I'll talk about this in next. But so in at-Tirmidhi, the hadith is labeled as Hasan Sahih. Very interesting. Hasan Sahih. Now, good luck to you figuring out what does Hasan Sahih mean. I mean, you will be in an avalanche of confusion. Hasan Sahih, All right. And it's not a surprise, from a mathematical point of view, from a deep scientific mathematical point of view. If you deal with contradictions, guess what? You can get anything. Those puzzles, by the way, on the internet, how you do some math and you end up with a number like 1 + 1, you will end up with 10. All of these puzzles have a contradiction in them. That's why you end up with multiple answers. So in reality, mathematics is the language of reality. In this hadith world, there are many. The whole foundation is contradictory. Therefore, you can come up with anything you want. Okay, so Sahih al-Bukhari then came up with a hadith عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما قال كان المال للولد وكانت الوصية للوالد. It used to be that way. I will just reinterpret the hadith quickly. He's saying that it used to be the way the first verse is saying. It used to be like that. Interesting. It used to be like that, and then in a year it changed. Why? I mean, it used to be one way, the wasiyah, and then Allah changed it. and it is interesting that the framers say, according to them, nasakh Allahu ma ahab. Allah, the Sahaba say, Allah has abrogated whatever He liked. So it gives you not just this vagueness and this contradiction, but it gives you a feeling of a temperamental God who within 1 year changes things. I mean, that's why when I keep saying that this hadith structure, this parallel religion is extremely dangerous, because it led to a culture that accepts contradiction. This is the seriousness of this matter. We try to sometimes dismiss it. We don't have time for it with this, but it's really important to understand how a methodology can affect how a person thinks. I don't want to brag about engineers. For instance, engineers go into 4 or 5 years of problem solving. They're not the most important people, intelligent people, but they're trained to look at everything as a problem to be solved. Scientists, after many years of doing science, they want to discover things. They're not interested in solving a problem, but they want to discover things. Okay. So the issue of intelligence has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. But after a while, this neuroplasticity probably it kicks in. Look at doctors. Doctors, when they enter the medical school, they're selected amongst the most intelligent, high achievers. But when they leave the medical school and after years of practice, they cease to be creative. Lawyers are the same thing, by the way. Naturally, because when you do something over and over, it affects your methodological way of looking at things. So here, in the case of the people who follow the hadith, it's full of contradictions. It's reconciling contradictions. And of course, by definition, you fail. Okay. Now, I want to go to another case. So this is, if I show you, I have a lot of documents to show how they went out of their way, to justify the hadith. The last thing I want to say about this, not to belabor this too much, is that Allah says, "Min ba'di wasiyya." This is completely fell on deaf ears. In the second verse, where Allah explicitly states the natural heirs, what they get, always He said, you distribute all of this min ba'di wasiyatin aw dayn. This fell on deaf ears. The hadith framers didn't want to recognize this. You see, didn't want to recognize this at all. Okay, now another interesting hadith, and then I'll go to the methodology later, is that when they fail to understand the Mus'haf, when they fail to understand certain verses, and there's no shame in saying I don't understand certain verses, life, believe me, life goes on if I don't understand certain verses. When they fail to understand certain verses, they came up, they try to, instead of looking at the meaning of words, to understand, in us who put serious efforts to understand the meaning of words, they came up with a hadith that eventually, the hadith, because they're not from Allah, when Allah says anything aside from His book, will have contradiction. Allah said it. لو كان من غير الله من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا. If it were not from Allah's book, there will be contradictions in it. This is a fact. In fact, this applies to everything in the world. Even when we try to understand science, because our knowledge is not from Allah, we will eventually find contradictions, and sometimes we overcome these contradictions, but still the picture is not crystal clear as it is in the Muslim. So the issue of daraba, the verse in the Quran where it says that treating women, I don't want to go through the verse. This is not the time to talk about the verse per se, but the concept or the word daraba is understood by the framers of hadith, classical framers, traditionalists, as beating a woman. Now, I think probably we discussed this earlier. In the 28 occurrences of the Mus'haf, daraba does not mean beating, doesn't. So why should, in the 27, so why should the 28th occurrence of daraba imply beating? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense in a probabilistic way that one out of 28 occurrences has a completely different meaning than the rest. So that's the point. So here's a hadith in Abi Dawood, and Abi Dawood is classified as one of the sahah, i.e. true. Abi Dawood is the least credible, by the way. Sunan Abu Dawud. I mean, it has bizarre ahadith, and I don't know how they classified it. As part of the sihah, they asked the Prophet, the Rasul, what do you say about our women? He said, according to the hadith, feed them from what you eat, cover them from what you cover. وَلَا تَضْرِبُوهُنَّ, do not beat them. وَلَا تُقَبِّحُوهُنَّ. تُقَبِّحُوهُنَّ means to hit them such that you will leave scars on their faces or their bodies. So I mean, this hadith is not religion. It makes a lot of sense. They asked him, what should we do with our women? He said, feed them from what you have, cover them from what you have, shelter them from what you have, and be careful. Don't abuse them. It just means don't abuse them. It's not religion. It's basic common sense. Now look in the same compendium, Abi Dawud compendium. عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا يسأل الرجل فيما ضرب امرأته. A man will never be asked why you beat your wife. In the same, okay? So you see, remember what I said earlier, there's a culture to accept contradictions, and when something is obviously not pleasantly fitting the theme, they just forget about it. You know, they give it a different classification. Now, Sunan Ibn Majah, which is one of the other Sahih, again on this subject, according to the Hadith, the Prophet says, "Be kind to women, take good care of them." I'm gonna skip a few things which are not, you know, it's a long Hadith. You don't be kind to them, blah blah blah, except they come up with a fahisha mubayyana. Fahisha, the fawahish in Islam have to do with sexual acts that are not allowed in Islam. Fahisha, that's the broader term that describes these acts, fahisha. Okay, so take good care of them. However, unless they come up with a fahisha mubayyana, meaning apparent fahisha. Okay, فإن فعلنا, and if they do, فهجروهن في المضاجع, then separate them in their bedrooms. واضربوهن ضربا غير مبرح, and beat them, but not too harsh, not too harsh. Now, it's really interesting. I mean, even the one who came up with this hadith was either not aware of the Quran or something. I mean, the fahisha, there's a punishment for that, right? There's the lashes according to the Mus'haf. So this is completely contradicting even the Mus'haf. My point, if eventually lies and contradictions cannot be hidden. So I am giving you, I want to give it, if it's okay, to another two examples of those, you know, of the contradictions between ahadith. And now here is a hadith that before I go into the methodology. So here's a hadith. This is very serious stuff. Now we're coming to something beyond beating women. This is something that has to do with killing. Okay, so Sahih Muslim. أمرت أن أقاتل الناس حتى يقولوا أن لا إله إلا الله. I was commanded to fight people until they يقولوا, until they say لا إله إلا الله. فمن قال لا إله إلا الله, whoever said لا إله إلا الله, فقد عصم مني ماله ونفسه إلا بحقه. Whoever said لا إله إلا الله, he protected himself from me, his money and his soul that are protected. I'm not going to, by the way, to discuss the fallacy of these ahadith and their bizarreness and their contradiction to the Mus'haf. No, that's not my subject here. I just want to show you how they contradict other ahadith within the same hadith compendium, al-Bukhari. And talking about a methodology. The second hadith, أمرت أن أقاتل الناس, I was commanded to fight people حتى يشهدوا أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمدا رسول الله ويقيموا الصلاة. First of all, in the first one, حتى يقولوا لا إله إلا الله, to say لا إله إلا الله. In the second one, until they testify that there's and that La ilaha illallah anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, that there's no God except Allah, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. ويقيموا الصلاة ويؤتوا الزكاة فإن فعلوا ذلك فإن عصموا مني دماء. And they have to do the salah and they have to do the zakah. Now, notice the two hadiths are different in terms of the requirements of what people need to do to protect themselves from me killing them, okay, from the Prophet killing them, number one. Number two, look at the important difference between the two. يقولوا in the first one, until يقولوا لا إله إلا الله. In the second one, look, حتى يشهدوا. What? Are the two the same? A world of difference between the two, a world of difference. And they claim that one of, and I'll get to that when we talk about the methodology, the Hadith framers claimed that you have to be knowledgeable of Arabic to be a trustworthy transmitter of Hadith. So obviously those who transmitted this Hadith on the assumption that it is correct, okay, which is absolutely rubbish, okay, because it, it contradicts the Mus'haf, plain and simple, okay, they did not find any differentiation between yashhad, to witness, and to say, let alone the fact that Allah in the entire Mus'haf never said, witness that there is no deity except Allah, let alone that he never said that, okay. So and you will see, I will come to that. See, they amongst, in this context, I have to say this, okay, in this context, amongst the key criteria that the Hadith scientists, if I may say, the Hadith framers came up with, the key criteria is that the Rawi, the transmitter, has to understand the secrets of the language of Arabic. Obviously, in this case, they didn't understand the language itself, let alone the secrets of the language. See, I'm going to go to the methodologies in a second, which is very, very, very amusing when we get to that subject. But there are, the last example, which is an important one, because I want to show you how they confused the issue of the words between nahi, tahrim, and mana. Nahi, tahrim, and mana. And bear with me, I will find it here because that's important. Okay. And even if I don't find it, but I will, yeah. I know it's not a very important subject whether we can eat the meat of donkeys or not. I know that we have higher priorities in life than to deal with that subject. But I wanted, but the reason is that I'm mentioning this is that to show you, to give you a window on the methodology that they're using and how many errors have been made in the transmission with the approval of with an approval from their from the methodology itself. Okay, I cannot find it, but I remember that this ahadith is that the Prophet is presumed to have said on the last sermon that you cannot eat the meat of donkeys, okay, domesticated donkeys. All right. Now the here it is. Wow, brother, you're so fast. Naha, look at this carefully, the top one. Naha قال نهى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن أكل لحوم الحمر الأهلية. Okay, naha is to ask people not to do something. It's not tahrim. It's absolutely not to make haram. So on the assumption that this is a true, something that the Prophet, the Messenger, has said, it has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do. Now, where does it have to do? How did they make it part of religion when they say that the Prophet made the eating of the donkey meat haram? You see? Now, Who gave them that on the assumption? I'm looking at the methodology, by the way. I'm not trying to understand whether this hadith is correct or not, or whether the Prophet said it or not. But on the assumption that the Prophet has said something like this, who gives any person the right to say that this has become a haram, which the hadith framers did? You see, of course, the nahi, there's mana, there's tahrim, okay? And the three are completely different things. Nahi, the nahi is to discourage someone from doing something. So the doctor, this is a famous example, that we go to the doctor and say don't drink, don't smoke or don't drink or whatever. Don't do these things because they're bad for you, okay? So, but you can go outside and drink and smoke. The doctor has no authority over you. Number two, the governor can forbid someone from drinking, which they did in the prohibition times in the 30s, okay? So the governor can prohibit, okay? Allah is the only one that can make haram. So if something is prohibited and I go and hide in my house and do it, it's not haram. I violated the law of the land and I pay the consequences. Okay, so I hope by just few examples, how this flawed system of hadith, we showed that this flawed system of hadith, just by showing 4 prominent examples, not trivial examples, 4 prominent examples, that there's no methodology, that it's full of contradictions, that there's no basis for these. There's no basis there's no sound methodology, period. Now let's go into something deeper. This is just, to give us a flavor of what is out there. My experience when I argued with people who are hadith champions is they have this style of jumping quickly. What about this? What about this? What about this? Boom, 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 boom. No, things don't work like that. If you look at a building and you see a column, okay, and you want to build building, let's say, and you start with a column that is flawed, don't go any further. That's it. If the methodology is flawed, I have no faith in the system that is based on this methodology. And instead of talking about vacuous generalizations, oh, those people were so gifted that they did something impossible, that Allah gave them that gift to do the impossible, those arguments are irrefutable. I mean, you cannot prove them wrong or you cannot prove them right. This concept of karama, Allah gave people the karama too. But aside from the karama and what Allah gave them, I'm showing you 4 prominent examples that show the flawed nature of this hadith structure. One important one, very important one, and that is Hadith Jibril, the famous Hadith Jibril. Now, we're not going to parse this hadith, only to just point out the contradictions between this fundamental hadith. This is a very big deal, this hadith, because the hadith framers claim that the foundation of Islam is explicitly stated in this hadith. Similarly, they claim that the foundation of Iman is stated in this hadith. I mean, look how big this hadith is. If one doesn't like the hadith about the eating the meat of the donkeys, we should listen to this one, okay? So in al-Bukhari, in Muslim, in Sahih Muslim, okay, the hadith, I'm not going to read the whole hadith, it's long, okay? The Rasul is stating the definition of Islam. Al-Islam, an tashhad anna la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Islam, that you witness that there's no Allah, there's no deity except Allah, and Muhammad Rasulullah. وتقيم الصلاة وتؤتي الزكاة وتصوم رمضان وتحج البيت إن استطعت إليه سبيلا. In other words, you do the salah, zakah, siyam, and you do the hajj. And it's really, really interesting. Can you imagine the whole Islam was reduced to first of all, the first statement is wrong. Allah never said witness that there's no deity except Allah. Never said that. Allah is saying iman, amen. Okay, never said witness. The second is that those acts, those performances to be the embodiment of Islam. Anyways, that's not our subject here, but let's see another hadith in al-Bukhari. Another hadith, by the way. Kitab al-Iman. All these hadith are in Kitab al-Iman, in the same chapter in al-Bukhari, by the way, not in two chapters. And they are claimed to be quote unquote sahih. Mal Islam, al-Islam an ta'bud Allah. Look, in the second hadith, the Islam that you worship Allah. Okay, ولا تشرك به شيئا. Interesting. There's ibadah here and there's shirk. In the first hadith, there's no ibadah and there's no shirk. In the second hadith, تقيم الصلاة المكتوبة وتؤدي الزكاة المفروضة وتصوم رمضان. These three are shared by the first hadith, but there's no, guess what? There's no hajj in the second one. Interesting. Look how loosely these hadith are treating things that are given significance in the Mus'haf. I'm not going to say fara'id or commandments, but that are mentioned in a prominent way in the Mus'haf. Here they're loosely tossed. One has hajj, one doesn't. One a'budullah wa la tushriku bihi shay'an, which I believe is closer to the truth of Islam. The other one doesn't. The other one witnessed that there's no God, there's no Allah, there's no God except Allah. There's no deity. Okay, see, look at the big contradiction between the two. Huge. Now, in the same hadith, the hadith is talking about iman. Okay, so in the first hadith, the hadith continues. O Prophet, tell me what is iman. He said, "And tu'min billah wa malaikatuhu," that you believe in Allah and His angels, wa kutubihi, and His books, wa rusulihi, wal yawm al-akhir, wa tu'min bil qadar. Interesting. The first, "and tu'min billah wa malaikatuhu wa kutubihi wa rusulihi wal yawm al-akhir," are mentioned in the Mus'haf. Okay, that's fine. Look what they added. Wa tu'min bil qadar khayrihi wa sharrih. And you believe in qadar. I have no clue what they mean by qadar. We talked about predestination in the past, but I assume they mean predestination. And if they meant predestination, they did not do a good job in framing this hadith. Okay, because qadar does not have a khair and shar, by the way. So it's irrelevant to attach khair and shar to qadar. Okay, let's look at the second one. Okay, the second one. ما الإيمان أن تؤمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ولقائه. They added meeting him. Okay, that's fine. ورسله وتؤمن بالبعث الآخر. Okay, so you believe in the last ba'th, in the last what should I say, al-ba'th, in the last journey, al-ba'th. But notice the second one did not have al-iman bil-qada' wal-qadar khayrihi wa sharrih. In other words, the second one did not have predestination in it. Wow, I mean, how loose they are with the foundational concepts of Islam and Iman. Okay, it didn't end there, by the way. These two, by the way, these two are in Muslim. These contradictory ahadith were in Muslim. Let's see there's another version of Hadith Jibreel in al-Bukhari. Okay, Kitab al-Iman. Again, it's called the chapter of Iman. Al-Iman an tu'min billah wa malaikatihi wa biliqa'ihi wa rusulihi wa tu'min bil-ba'th. Interesting, very close to what the Qur'an says. Okay, these are the Iman. Okay, قال ما الإسلام؟ الإسلام أن تعبد الله ولا تشرك به وتقيم الصلاة تؤدي الزكاة المفروضة وتصوم رمضان. Very similar to the second, interesting, very close to the second hadith in Muslim. Guess what is being championed the most? Typically, you would expect al-Bukhari to be championed the most because they claim that al-Bukhari is the most authentic or the most true book after the Book of Allah, which is a very, very strange construction. What do you mean by true book? Is Allah's book is true? What do they mean by that? Anyways, so in other words, they're giving a feature to al-Bukhari similar to a feature that describes the Book of Allah. Anyways, but notice al-Bukhari, who is supposed to be the most championed compendia of ahadith, is forgotten completely, and most of the books mention hadith, the first hadith of Muslim, which added predestination. Very interesting. And predestination doesn't exist in the Mus'haf. So if one finds that this is a sound methodology, then let's find out in real, okay, in real, what is this methodology is all about. Now, how the first thing is the authenticity, is the validity. The hadith is based on what they call it a sanad wal matan. I mean, big words to impress people. Sanad, the chain of transmission. Sanad is the chain of transmission. Matan is the core of the hadith. Now, theoretically, the hadith framers claim that both are important to determine the authenticity of a certain hadith. This is a true hoax. In reality, only the transmission is being considered as the way to tell if a certain hadith is true or not, which is interesting. You know, if you think about it, in other words, if I believe that a certain chain of transmitters were honest, perfect, never forgotten anything, did everything meticulously, then the hadith is to be used as part of religion. Interesting, very, very interesting, you know. So now, you see, they claimed, the hadith framers claimed that there has to be an honesty of the transmitters. This is very important. They cannot lie. They cannot forget. All features practically that are only present in Allah. You know, only present. In other words, a perfect person. Okay. Now, and also very interesting that al-Bukhari used certain criteria for claiming that a certain hadith is true. Notice, his definition of true is a technical definition. It does not mean true without quotes, in real, true. It happened. No, it doesn't. So he developed a criteria. I'll share this secret with you. We don't know what that criteria was. Okay, how did we come to know what some believe was the criteria that al-Bukhari used? Through what we believe his students have said about him. In other words, in al-Bukhari himself, he doesn't say these are my criteria. No, what has come to us is what some believe his students have said. This is the criteria. Now, Muslim, al-Bukhari died 254, I believe, Hijri. Many times after the Prophet. 264, I think, is when Muslim died, like 10, 20 years after that, or thereabout. He came up with a different criteria. Now, at least I find to be Muslim to be more transparent. An-Naysaburi, his name is An-Naysaburi. He was from Naysabur, northeast of today's Iran. At least he was explicit about his criteria. And it is fascinating to read what he said in his Sahih. He actually gave us reasons to doubt that these ahadith are fully authentic. He himself, and people dismissed what he himself said, and they created, they put him on a pedestal that he, in all honesty and all fairness, he never wanted to be on. Okay. Anyways, there are political reasons, we don't want to get into it, but so for instance, al-Bukhari believed, or one of them is that al-Bukhari believed that two transmitters must have lived in the same time and must have communicated with each other. Two layers of transmitters. Muslims said no, they don't have to have met each other. One could have been in Tashkent, and the one could have been in Samarkand. One could have been in Cairo. Imagine this is happening nowadays. It's a very difficult task to authenticate someone that is transmitting something who is living in Cairo, and someone picks it up in China. Now with the digital world, we'll have to verify that, whether there will be all kind of any. But anyways, in those days, so Muslim came and he said that's perfectly fine. Now this is what has come to us. This is the methodology that has come to us, or the methodology that is being claimed Muslim followed. Okay, I know, brothers and sisters, it's a labyrinth of confusion, but bear with me. This is what we have to deal with. It's a labyrinth of confusion, and the more we know about it, the more we know about the fragility and the danger of this system, this parallel system that has captured the lives and the souls and the attention of most Muslims. I mean, we really have to know these realities. And through this knowledge, we become more powerful in telling people, look, this has nothing to do with Islam, brothers and sisters. Now, let me show you. Now, they came up with something. Let's get into the methodology. As if people were not satisfied, clearly. It's not that we're the only ones who are smart and find contradictions in this body of hadith. People at the time of the Shafi'i, towards the end of the 2nd century of Hijrah, people were not happy. Some people lump them under the Mu'tazilites. I don't like to lump them under the Mu'tazilites. There were many free thinkers who said, wait a minute, this is something really fishy. Something is not going on. So there were agitation within the Muslim scholarship body or the Muslims, and people came, let's say, like Al-Jarjani, who lived 365 years. He died 365 Hijri, 976 Gregorian. He was one of those who started, and I do believe, I'm not doubting his intention. I'm not doubting the intention of anyone, by the way. I'm not. I mean, we're not here to put people on trial. I'm not. We're talking about historical fragments. Whatever reached us is historical fragments, and that's the reality. So Al-Jarjani, who died in the year 365, he is one of the ones who started this so-called science. It's called in Arabic al-Jarh wa al-Ta'dil. Okay, I'll translate it later. Jarh means to create an injury, a cut. That Jarh. Ta'dil is to fix things. But clearly, there was a lot of agitation. People were revolting, saying, what is this? We have a 1 million ahadith. There must have been a cottage industry. If you have melons and you want to market your melons, just ask someone to write you a hadith and claim that the Prophet loved melons, and there you go. The black seed, I think it's a big joke, frankly. People believe that the black seed cures everything. Why doesn't Mass General Hospital, one of the best in the US, in the world actually, have a black seed trial at least? It's so cheap. It's nonsense. It's completely nonsense. Anyways, so they found out. So he started this al-Jarh wa al-Ta'dil, what later became ilm al-Rijal. Look at this, the science of men. So here comes a man 365 after the Prophet died, who died 365 years after Hijrah, who is starting digging into the authenticity and the credibility, or in Arabic, misdaqiyat, the men who wrote Hadith. I mean, come on. Does anyone believe in that? I mean, it's preposterous. You know, if you were to think about someone who lived with the President Hoover, I don't know, when did President Hoover live? 120 years ago, something like that. A secretary or a prime minister, and we want to find out the credibility of that person. I mean, people will laugh at you. You know, I mean, on top of that, you know, these lie testing polygraphs, the lie testing machines, they have a probability of success on live humans. Imagine on dead people, you know. So Al-Jarjani started digging 300 years back to find the credibility of people. Imagine the availability of printed material in those days. I mean, it's really preposterous task, or even to think about it. But anyways, it seems like this is what had happened, and we don't know their thinking. Maybe they were, you know, they had good ideas, good thoughts. I assume many of them had good ideas. They said, wait a minute, there's a flood of rubbish. We really need to at least narrow things down. Now, why did they want to narrow things down? Because it was entrenched in their heads that the Sunnah is as good or equal to the Quran. It was entrenched in their heads. Absolutely. Otherwise, why would one go through that effort? Now, you know, Al-Dhahabi, I want to mention something very interesting. I just want to give you a snippet. Don't think that I'm cherry picking, please. There's a lot of examples, but I want to give you a snippet on how they documented or how they looked at this ilm, the science of men. So here's someone by the name of Abi Salih al-Farra. Abi Salih al-Farra wa Ismail ibn Ayyash, two figures. I mean, you would ask, who are these two figures? Well, we are told to believe they were good people. I really don't care whether they were good people or bad people. I mean, imagine I want to spend my life digging documents that goes back to the year 200 after Hijrah to find out if someone is credible or not. Okay, so these two people were from the Hadith transmitters, and we were included in this very important volume, A'lam al-Nubala, for Al-Dhahabi. For those who study Hadith, this is like a very important, it's like the Bible of Hadith science, okay? And it contains 30 volumes, okay? Big volumes. And this includes all the people, or most of the people who transmitted Hadith. So they will tell you, is that good? Is that bad? Someone says something about him. I know some of you are laughing at this, if this is a methodology or not, but let me show you this very important example. Abi Salih al-Farra, who is one of the transmitters, he says about Ibn Ayyash, and please bear with me because this is the so-called science, I know. إن الرجل لا يعلم بما يخرج من رأسه. He's saying about the other one, that man doesn't know what comes out of his head. In other words, he's a lunatic. Okay? At-Tirmidhi, in his Sahih volume, Al-Jami', so At-Tirmidhi is one of the 6 Sahih, he included Hadith to Ibn Ayyash, the one who we're told he did not know what was coming out of his head. You see, this is the Hadith science that we're talking about. I know, you know, you would probably ask, have this question, why did I, you know, do these things? Because I really wanted to know whether there's something substantive or not. I know, you know, I don't think it's a waste of time. Absolutely not. Now, look at this very, very important example, okay? they also, Ibn Sirin, one of the famous ones, okay, in the introduction of Muslim, Sahih Muslim, he is talking about Ibn Sirin, who died early in the year 111. When they used to look for transmitters, they would ask, which group were you with? Those who revolted, those who were with Ali, or those who were with Uthman? So it was a sectarian-based methodology by their definition, sectarian-based. So imagine, just like right now, you know, if I were, if just to give this example to bring it home, if the Americans say, if a scientist from Russia comes up with something and the Americans say, oh, he's Russian, then I cannot take what he's telling us. You know, that kind of bizarre. The second important thing is memory, okay, because they claim that people had great memory, right? Always, we're told that they had incredible memory, fantastic memory. Okay, let's look at a hadith within the ahadith that they believe in. I'm going, first of all, before I go into that, the memory is the weakest thing a human can have. You know, we forget things. One doesn't need to be old. Memory is a fragile thing. Okay, everybody knows. All scientists know that. Sometimes when we are under stress, we forget more than usual. When we are happy, we remember. There is an issue, by the way, and that is there's this question of whether it came up a long time ago, whether a person will be tortured by the mourners when they cry during his funeral. I know it's a bizarre thing. I know we have better things to do. But I just want to, but this hadith is important to show you that there is an admission within their body of knowledge that memory is fragile. So the hadith goes like this. فَقُمْتُ, I got up and I went to see Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, the last wife, and I told her something. قال Ibn Umar said, قالت لا والله ما قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قط. The Prophet, the Messenger of Allah, never said what you're telling me, that the dead person will be tortured by the cries of anyone. But he said, Aisha continues, إن الكافر يزيده الله ببكاء أهله عذابا. The kafir will be tormented more by the cries of his relatives. We're not interested in the body of this hadith, but let's look at the end of it. I will skip. قالت إنكم لتحدثوني عن غير كاذبين. You are not telling me a story about liars. Look what Aisha, according to them, is saying. She said, you're not telling me a story about liars. Aisha was conservative. She did not accuse anyone, according to the hadith, of lying. She said, but hearing sometimes can give you wrong information. In other words, you can hear something, not what exactly was said, or you can hear something and interpret it differently. It happens to many of us. So this is an admission at the time when Aisha was alive. She's talking about people around her that they could have forgotten or misinterpreted something. And they are trying to tell us we need to trust a chain of transmitters through 5 generations, that some of them could not see each other. Is this a methodology? Is this a scientific methodology? Okay. Now let's look at lying. They claim that, you know, let's look at whether people lied around the Prophet or not. Remember when I said at the beginning of today's discussion, the Prophet said, there was Allah is telling the Prophet and the people around him, there are hypocrites around you. You don't know them, I know them. Now, let's see what's embodied in the doctrine of the Hadith framework. Sahih Muslim, okay, has a hadith, very interesting hadith. Again, in Sahih Muslim, it's called a Sahih. عن أبي رزين, someone. قال, he said, Abi Razin was a man who lived at the time of the Prophet from the context of this hadith. قال خرج إلينا أبو هريرة. Abu Huraira, notice my words, I'm going to translate it very honestly. خرج إلينا, he came out to see us. Abu Huraira, the one who Al-Bukhari took 400 hadith from him. Very controversial figure. Okay, he said Abu Huraira came out to us to meet us. فضرب بيده على جبهته. He did something like this. فقال ألا إنكم تحدثون إني أكذب على رسول الله. Are you saying that I lie about the Prophet? And to the rest of the hadith. Look, he is telling Abi Razin, who was sitting, because Abi Razin, this man said, he came out to us. So Abu Huraira was addressing Abu Razin and others, telling them, do you think that I've been lying on the Prophet or creating fake ahadith? أكذب على رسول الله, till the end. Now, Abu Razin, he was one of the Sahaba. You see, which means that the Sahaba themselves could not establish the credibility of people around them. You know, it seems like you're telling me, but you're going in circles, but you mentioned that verse. Exactly, I'm going in circles because that verse is sufficient for me. That verse is sufficient. I don't need to go to this hadith, but this hadith is embedded within the body of this hadith framework that they use, you see. So speaking about the methodology, this is the methodology that I will conclude. I will say a few things here that are really important. What all of this led, and there's much more to share, but this is not the right time, because it's a labyrinth. It's literally a labyrinth. I listened today to a recording by Al-Albani. Al-Albani is the most modern hadith scientist, highly respected by the Salafis, died 1999. He corrected or redefined the authenticity grade of many ahadith from al-Bukhari to Abi Dawud. In other words, people are still testing the authenticity of ahadith. In other words, people are still testing the authenticity of what? Religion. If hadith is religion, then people are still testing the authenticity of religion. So I listened to an audio recording of him. It's available on YouTube, because I wanted to know, what did he mean by Hasan Sahih when he labels some of the Abi Dawud hadith as Hasan Sahih? You know what? He said, wow, that's a perfect question you're asking me. This is a deep subject that I need to look into it further. And he continued, I want to warn you, this hadith science is a very difficult and very complex. I think I proved to you today that it is nothing but a falsehood, literally a falsehood, not a science, but a falsehood. Okay, so the last thing I want to mention is that they came up with their criteria. And then I will stop. I'll mention this part and then I'll stop. They came up with criteria for people to be accepted in transmitting a hadith, or for people to have the trustworthiness of transmitting a hadith. Okay. One, that the transmitter, he must know the dalalat, the meaning of words, and the nuances and the differences between them. Okay? Interesting. 2. أن يبدل اللفظ بما يرادفه. So he will, and he cannot switch words. That he can switch, look at this, that he can switch words if they mean the same, different words. And we know very well that different words don't mean the same thing. Okay? 3, that the translation has to be similar to the first. I have no idea what they mean by that. There's a 5th criteria, which is very convoluted, a 6th, which is even more convoluted, and there's a 7th, and one has to know the secrets of words and this and that. Now, notice that I gave you examples where ilm and ma'rifah were conflated. In other words, they did not separate ilm from ma'rifah. 2 big different concepts. Qu'ud julus. Qu'ud julus are 2 words that are different. They consider them to be the same. Nahi, mana', tahrim. They did not see a difference between them. Shahada, qawl. Remember the examples that I gave. Shahada and qawl. They conflated the 2. According to them, they mean the same thing. Now, the interesting thing is that who in the world did put these rules? A very interesting question. Who decided that these are the rules that are needed to give you a trustworthy transmitter? Now, the last thing I will conclude with this is that it's an issue, it's a mathematical proposition. The hadith framers, explicitly allowed transmission of hadith through the meaning. Wow. Do many people know this? In other words, they say it's okay for you to switch words as long as you keep the meaning. Now, but the meaning is relative, isn't it? I mean, the meaning, someone could understand something. You see, Qur'an is not transmitted through meaning. If I don't understand it, I carry on. I give it to my sons. I tell them this is the book that I believe Allah sent to us. I don't reinterpret it. Okay? That is the concept of transmission. If you were to interpret something and give it to someone else, even by the time you give it to that person, you have changed a lot from what was originally stated. Okay? Because my interpretation is based on place, time, and everything. Now imagine if there are 4 or 5 transmitters. Okay? 4 or 5 transmitters. Okay? The first person can change the meaning of the words, or can forget, or let's not get into can lie, but that's a possibility. Or guess what? Let's leave lie aside. Can add, guess what? The approved addition in hadith. This is their methodology. In other words, if you have certain criteria, you can add to the hadith. You know, when I saw this, my mind went bananas. I mean, I went crazy when I read this the first time. I mean, you can add. So notice, remember when they say hadith is wahi? So in other words, the wahi can be interpreted. Look, the wahi can be changed in transmission the way I understand it. So we can change the wahi according to them. I'm going to use their framework. I can change the wahi and I can add to the wahi. It's fully permissible. But not anyone can do it. No, hold on a second. There are certain criteria that have to be met in me for me to do this. Should I say it? Plain shirk, plain subterfuge, plain deceit. So now, just to continue this example, so if we were to play with the field of probability, if there's a probability 0.95 that a transmitter forgot. Okay, sorry, 0.95 that he said that he did not forget, which is a very high probability, by the way. 0.95 that he did not add anything. 0.95 that he did not forget. And you have 4 or 5 transmitters. Okay, the way to calculate the probability of the authenticity is to take 0.95 to the power 12. Okay, 0.95 times 0.95 times 0.95 all the way, because each one has 3. We give them only 3. We could have given more criteria, but I gave only 3. 3 times 0.95 to the power 12, you'll end up with 0.5, which means that the hadith could be right or could be wrong. Okay, on top of the fact that let's say on the assumption that the hadith is right, okay, it is only stating that the transmitters conveyed to me what was given to them in the first place. What was given to them in the first place is something fabricated or not. The hadith framers and the hadith methodology doesn't tell me anything about that. And in the conclusion, there is the hadith, those who are entrenched in the world of hadith have their mind started adopting a culture of contradiction, of mercuriality, and which affects their life, which affects actually the unfortunately many innocent Muslims and non-Muslims look at this religion, which is supposed to be infinitely precise. I'll stop here, Brother Hamza. I hope I did not go too much, but it was, I think it was good once maybe in a lifetime to go through this exercise, which I know at the end of the day, I want to be frank with you, at the end of the day, did I gain any insight from this exercise about religion? I'll be frank with you, I didn't. Is it an important exercise? Absolutely. I think it's an important exercise to do it once, so that people will not be scared or intimidated by the so-called, hadith science. I'm really shocked by Western academics. Why I focus on Western academics? Because they're not under the tutelage or the control of religious institutions in the East. Those academics do not have, I think, the freedom, I don't know, or the guts or the courage to say, what is this? This is a flawed system, a flawed structure that is based on one word only, and that is hearsay. Okay, Brother Hamza. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Brother Omar, for this very thorough and enlightening presentation. I don't know if it would be fair to say that it might be on a somewhat academic level. Would you conclude that? Not that that's something bad. I'm just wanting to say, yeah.
No. I really don't like to have a separation in life, between academic and non-academic. I mean, you yourself delve sometimes into very, very fascinating, deep issues in the Mus'haf, and you don't tell people this is an academic, discussion. And I don't like that separation. There is hadith scholarship. I agree. There's something called hadith scholarship. In other words, if someone wants to study how the hadith whole thing came about, absolutely, there's a lot of scholarship that can be done in that. If someone wants to understand how Muslims, expanded their domain, there's a lot of scholarship. But is it religion? That's the key. That's the key. Because scholarship is the study of anything. Scholarship is the study. Some people who are expert in hadith, they can be expert in the way the hadith evolve, but there's no such thing as hadith science.
Mhm.
Big difference between the two.
Okay, I guess I said that because I brought with me today in anticipation of your topic, a very rare piece of literature that I've had in my possession for at least 45 years. And it's out of print now, if I can put it up, if it can be shown here. It's called the Hadith literature, its origins and critical origin, development, special features, and criticisms. And it's right now it's out of print. It's not coming up too good. But I want to just, if I can, share something before we just get into some more questions.
Who's the author, Brother Hamza? Who's the author?
Let's see, Dr. Muhammad Zubair, Zubayr Siddiqui, Siddiqui. Dr. Muhammad Zubayr, Zubayr Siddiqui. He's a professor of Islamic culture at Calcutta University. This was in 1961. The book now has been deemed out of print. But now I'm going to put something up on the screen dealing with the word hadith. Can you put that up on the screen, brother? Okay. This is one of the pages in here. It deals with the definition of the word hadith. Here he says the word hadith primarily means new, something new. It is used as opposed to qadim, which means old. From this follows the use of the term for a piece of news, a tale, a story or report, be it historical or legendary, true or false, relating to the present or to the past, immediate or remote. In this sense, the word has been used by the pre-Islamic poets and in the Qur'an and tradition of the Prophet. The storytellers were called Hudath. Now, here again, he goes on to say, and I'll just leave it at that. He says the general connotation of the word hadith has like that of many other words, the word salah, the word sujud, the word ruku, zakat, etc. Those words have been changed under the far-reaching influences of Islam. The Muslims, since the very lifetime of Muhammad, call the reports with regard to his sayings and doings the best hadith, the Aqsanal hadith, which we see in the Quran. They call them that. And by and by, its uses was confined to the reports of Muhammad's words and deeds only. So, and I think you mentioned something about in your presentation about words. The framers of these hadith promoters promoting it to authority pretty much over the text of the Quran, that as long as the sense of the word remained, the word itself could be changed. Is that something like what you said? That as long as they kept the sense of the word, they could use different words.
I really don't understand your question well, Brother Hamza. Can you rephrase it?
No, I just was based on the point here that words like salah, I believe the word salah, as it's related in the Quran, it has a whole different meaning outside of the text of the Quran when it comes to hadith. And the practitioners of this ritual prayer called salah, I don't think that's the identity or the manifestation of the word salah as it relates to the Quran. Sujud, ruku, zakat, all of these words. I don't know. I think they've morphed into something else with the religion that has been formed around these words. You just gave about the 5 pillars, pretty much how they formulated this 5 pillar business. All of that is, none of that's in the Quran. None of this 5 pillars is in the Quran. So all of these words, the idea that religion, that Islam has become a religion, the words in the Quran have taken on a religious coloring. You see, ibadah has become worship. You see, zakat has been paying money. One thing after the other, you follow me? So this is why I was talking about the idea of an academic approach, because I had also, and I'll probably deal with it some other time, but maybe I brought it just in case it comes up during question and answer time, how the Quran deals with this issue of hadith and refutes it straight out of the verses of the Quran, very simply and point blank. But again, there's a need for to find how this originated outside of the text of the Quran, which you presented very well, and to understand that. This is what I'm saying. It's not a problem with that approach. But again, some people will wrangle over that and argue about this and bring their source and this source and that source. And for me, I'd rather just have the source what Allah uses the term hadith in the Quran. Allah uses the term hadith. So he knows how to use that term hadith, and he rejects the term hadith that's anything other than the hadith that he sanctions. He rejects any outside hadith, any hadith from narrators or anybody else. He rejects all of that. So let me just show a couple more things, and then we can get a little further into some questions regarding your talk. Now, there was another situation in this book. It begins, oh yeah, he has on the screen here. He goes on to say on page 96 of this book, it would be a mistake, however, to suppose that the Sahih has no defects, meaning the Sahih, all of these Sahih Sittas, any of them, it would be a mistake to suppose, and you pointed that out yourself, Brother Omar, in your presentation, that they have no defects, or that Muslim scholars have failed to criticize it. Thus, it is generally admitted that, like other traditionists, al-Bukhari has confined his criticism to the narrators of traditions and their reliability, and that to the probability or possibility of the truth of the matters reported by them, he has paid no attention. Now, another point, and this is the last one, regarding, I think you touched on this also, and this is in a footnote on page 192, where he says, according to the traditionalists, the people who specialize in this hadith business, the term al-Sahih does not mean that the tradition is actually true or genuine, but that it fulfills the condition laid down by them for a reliable tradition. In other words, when we talk so much in our proponents of these hadith and how they came to us and one thing after the other, when they talk about that, we're not, they can have no idea or no argument to table for us that the term Sahih means that the subject matter is correct. It only means, according to these specialists who he points to, that the methodology used to compile and bring it to us is sound. What is being said, ain't nobody checked that like that at all. Would you agree?
Yeah, brother, absolutely.
I think you would, because that's what you said pretty much. Yeah.
No. It's absolutely, these are technical. There are 30, according to some hadith so-called scientists, there are 30 classifications of hadith authenticity grades. 30. I said something towards the end of my first presentation, is that it's nauseating and painstakingly, the effort that you go through knowing all of this is not a pleasant effort, brother. It's not. And believe me, I mean, it is not. But I wanted to know, is there something genuine behind this business of hadith? Honestly, maybe I'm wrong. I wanted to know, how did they come up with these but I want to go back to what you said as far as the hadith. There is a tendency to steal, to usurp, to violate the sanctity of the words of Allah. There is a tendency. And it had played in different scenarios. Hadith, Allah uses hadith for one thing and one thing only. He's referring to things in the Mus'haf, whether it is stories or similar. It is there in something in the Mus'haf. To take that nomenclature, to take that term and to apply it to something else, I think it's a violation of the Mus'haf. I really do believe so. Similarly, Sunnah, Sunnah. Sunnah means something in the Mus'haf. فَلَا تَجِدُ لِسُنَّةِ اللَّهِ تَبْدِيلًا وَلَا تَجِدُ لِسُنَّةِ اللَّهِ. Allah is talking about His Sunnah. Okay, His Sunnah. All of a sudden, we have a new definition for Sunnah. Why this happened? I don't think this happened accidentally. I really don't think so. I think it happened in a somewhat mischievous way, because when we look at the hadith, did you notice that the hadith framers, they lived their golden era of the hadith framers? It coincided with a political era. And there's a lot of justifications that I'm sorry, I don't buy those justifications. Why in a certain period? If you look at Al-Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, Abu Dawood, all of them lived within, I think, they died within 50 years of each other. So in those days, there were some strong effort to create a parallel religion. That's it.
Yeah. Before I go any further, maybe I can come back if we don't have anyone that would like to question. Okay, if anybody has any input they'd like to add regarding what we've been presented by Brother Omar. Any questions, any add-ons, any maybe a disagreement? Anyone who's listening can tap in. Anyone?
Brother, I want to make a clarification here, and I want all the present brothers and sisters to watch for it. If there's a flaw in the foundation, then the whole structure is flawed, in my opinion.
Exactly.
Okay. I chose 4 or 5 case studies, and not because they're easy. No, absolutely not. But they really resemble the methodology that being used. I argued with many people throughout the years, many people. I mean, I patiently tried to learn, try to understand where they're coming from. At the end, I don't think, and I stand to be corrected, I don't think anyone with a sound mind and the healthy brain would see validity in the methodology that I mentioned today. I don't think so. I really don't think so. No, and that's why people throughout history created these so-called sciences to make a sense out of what happened. It's all based on hearsay. If I were to tell you, I loved my grandfather, he's the most trustworthy. Really? You tell me, really? That he could be. you know. So instead, my humble advice is that I know there could be a labyrinth going through this so-called field, but the best way is to take case studies, and case studies are really empowering. Case studies are really empowering. Just take one of the 4 ahadith or 5 that we looked into, and ask for rationality. Why in Hadith Jibril, and this is serious stuff, we're not talking about eating donkey meat, we're talking about man. Why there's a discrepancy? Which one should I take? And they're both classified as sahih. So, and it reminds me, a long time ago, I had a friend who was very religious at one point in his life, and then later on he kind of went the other direction. But he told me something very interesting. He said, Brother Omar, in Islam, you can justify anything you want. He was right. In this kind of Islam, in the Hadith type of Islam, you can justify anything you want. Because with contradictions, and I can prove it mathematically, with contradictions, you can come up with any conclusion. Any conclusion. But the universe, Allah's creation, Al-Haq, everything, cannot be based on contradiction. It cannot. It cannot. It's precise. It's the atoms, the number of atoms, the number of molecules that make anything. It's all precise, and we kind of I mean, of course, we discussed it earlier. Allah, the Prophet is saying, "Ya qawmin, ya inna qawmi ittakhadhu hadha al-Qur'ana mahjura." Because sometimes you say, did these people didn't read the Quran to find that this hadith is completely wrong? So anyway, the message that I want to say is that let's not ignore these important case studies. I outlined 5, and there's tens of others, hundreds of others. I discuss this sometimes with my wife. I tell her, if you walk in front of me while I'm praying, you nullify my prayer. Just like a donkey, or not a donkey, a dog walks in front of me. By the way, poor dog. I didn't know why they pick on dogs. Dogs are faithful, right? And they're supposed to be very faithful, man's best friend. So she said, no, I don't buy that hadith. I said, I don't buy it either. So which hadith you want to buy? Which hadith you want to buy? Okay. So anyways, if there are others want to comment, I'll stop here.
Well, I think that which hadith you want to buy again goes over to chapter 46, verse 5 over there, where 45 verse 6, where these are the ayats of Allah. Which hadith you want after Allah and his ayats, whatever the ayats or convey, refer to. I think the word hadith is talking about these sayings that we just talked about, whether true or false, old or new, whatever. These are the sayings. Some people will argue that, brother, that word hadith here doesn't relate to the hadith that the messenger spoke, or the prophet rather spoke. It's talking about something else. I don't buy that. But now, when we talk about now, unless anybody else has a question, I don't want to just be Brother Omar and myself just going backwards and forward with this. Anybody else? I'm sure somebody else would have something they'd like to ask. Anybody?
Yes, I have a question.
I have a question too.
Okay, would you just give your name and where you are from located, please?
My name is Shafiq Ali, and I'm from Long Island, New York, Baldwin, New York. I have a question because you mentioned it's for either one of you, Hamza and Dr. Omar. You mentioned that the purpose of these things, you were leaning towards political. Could it be another purpose other than political, based on this, the Quran, what is it, 56, 81, and 82, that a purpose can be money-wise or financial?
Absolutely, brother. I that was a hypothesis on my part, and I have sufficient data points, historical data points, to make me conclude that it was political. But that also includes what you mentioned. I mean, politics is not a vacuous thing. Politics for the sake of economic dominance. Politics is the sake of for social dominance. There could be other forces. There could be non-Muslims at that time who were lurking in the background. I'm not going to deny that, who were from the Jewish or the Christian faith or other faith who were not happy with the dominance of a new religion, who started, churning a hadith left and right. So yeah, I mean, I'm very comfortable to say that there were motives behind this. It was a cottage industry. It was a cottage industry. I mean, when al-Bukhari, that's what we were told, he started his mission to purify the hadith collection. There were 1 million hadith, or some other stories say 600,000. Irrespective, there could be 10,000, but it was a cottage industry, But you see, the something that is important to go that, I mean, this discussion today is a very important information. However, it may differ from the foundational discussion that we had earlier. When we talk about Al-Shafi'i is the one, in my opinion, he may have laid the ground for the dominance of the Sunnah and the Hadith. Shafi'i. I mean, Al-Bukhari and others could be minute, small players, in my opinion, and some people could have given them prominence, possibly. I mean, imagine in those days, is it easy to print a book? I don't think it was easy.
No.
In those days. So there must have been some backers. In the case of Muslim, believe it or not, there's a backer, and most likely a financial backer, and he did not hide that information. Muslim himself, and Naisaburi,
Right.
Sahih Muslim, I dug this information from his introduction. There's a backer, there's a benefactor who was behind Muslim. You see, so this reveals that there could have been more of this. There could have been more of this happening at that time. Yes. So yeah.
Because I see also you mentioned 1999 with Albani,
Yeah.
And he's to me, he's like, other than Shafi, he's the one that's pushing this what should I say, hearsay further now in present time as opposed to them. But thank you, it's understood. Thank you. Hamza, do you have any comment on what I asked also?
No, I think it's sufficiently dealt with. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I could talk about it, but no need to go further with that.
Yes, okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Name and I started to say address, but where are you from?
This is Alan, Qur'an versus Hadith from San Francisco.
Very good.
So earlier, Omar, you mentioned that messenger sole duty is to deliver the message, right?
Yes.
Okay, in chapter 2, verse 144, God said, "We have seen your face turn towards the heaven, so we will turn you towards a direction that will satisfy you. So turn your face towards the sacred mosque." I'm asking you because you speak Arabic. If his sole duty is to deliver the message, is he not happy with his deliverance? Why is he complaining to Allah? And what is this new Qibla that Allah is talking about?
Let me see, you're going to 2:144.
Yeah.
Okay. قد نرى تقلب وجهك في السماء فلنولينك قبلة ترضاها. Okay, so you فولي شطرك وجهك شطر المسجد. So he's telling him to face the Masjid al-Haram. So what is your point, brother? I don't understand your point.
Throughout the Quran, Allah says the messenger's duty is to deliver the message, and that's it. And here we have a Prophet Muhammad not happy with whatever he was doing, and Allah says, "We see you turning towards the heaven, your face, so we will turn you towards a direction that will satisfy you." Why wasn't he satisfied in the first place if his sole duty is to deliver the message?
No, I think there are several issues here. I don't see any expression of dissatisfaction. I cannot conclude that. قد نرى تقلب وجهك في السماء. There's no expression of dissatisfaction. There is none. And then so I cannot make that conclusion. I mean, I really cannot.
I just have a hard time figuring out what this means. Maybe because you speak Arabic, maybe you see something that I don't.
No, I'm sharing with you my whatever I know. تقلب وجهك في السماء. we will نولينك, we will give you, or we will direct you to قبلة ترضاها, that you will be more content with. That doesn't mean that he was dissatisfied. Maybe I'm not reading that into it. I cannot read beyond what I see into it. But that aside, Allah says, وَمَا عَلَى الرَّسُولِ إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينُ. I mean, it's not up to me. I mean, he said that the Rasul has nothing except to convey the message.
Exactly. Well, okay, never mind. I have one more comment. Earlier you mentioned that.
Well, before you go any further, Alan, you confused your question by stating at the outset you're talking about the messenger, and then you started talking about the prophet. Which one are you talking about there?
Well, Allah is saying here, we have seen your face turned towards the heaven. So
who is the personality that you're talking about, the messenger or the prophet? Because you use both words.
Well, it doesn't say here.
But you said messenger and you said prophet. Which one do you want to say?
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay, sir.
Yeah, I have one more comment, Omar.
Please.
Earlier you said that you don't label people as disbeliever or mushrik. But 6106 calls everybody mushrik, unless you believe in God alone, through Quran alone.
6106?
Yeah, it's calling everybody mushrik.
6106, which is وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَا أَشْرَكُوا. Right? وَمَا جَعَلْنَاكَ عَلَيْهِمْ حَفِيظًا. Why do you conclude that way, brother? I mean, there's a big context to this.
Let me make sure I got the right verse.
It might be 107 or something. I don't know.
So it says, follow what has been revealed to you from your Lord. There is no God except him, and turn away from those who associate partner with God.
Exactly. Right.
So it says over here, and stay away from al-mushrikeen. So unless you follow the revelation and follow something else, you're automatically a mushrik.
No, but Allah, I mean, the message here that I understand, اتبع ما أوحي إليك, follow what has been revealed to you from your Lord. لا إله إلا هو, there's no deity except He. وأعرض عن المشركين, and leave the mushrikeen aside.
Exactly. So if you're Sunni, you're automatically a mushrik.
Oh, now, okay, you want to talk about this verse or about the concept of shirk in general, or what?
No, it's just earlier you mentioned that you don't label people as, mushriks or disbelievers, but according to me, 6106 is calling everybody mushrik unless you follow God alone through Quran alone.
No, not necessarily. I don't see. كذلك نصرف الآيات اتبع ما أوحي إليك. Oh, sorry, brother. We have an understanding. I have an understanding of what shirk is, and I assume you do, and us. What I meant to say is that I am not in the business of labeling people. Okay, because I understand what shirk implies. To label someone a mushrik, it means that I am 100% sure that thing applies to that person, and I'm not going through that exercise. I will not do it.
Okay. I understand. Thank you.
Let me just tag on to Brother Omar's point there, and that's what exactly, I'm glad he mentioned it himself. that's exactly what he's saying, is that he personally is not in the business of labeling people mushrik, kufar, whatever, you see. He's not in the business of doing that. Not that the Quran doesn't identify who these, the personalities and the characteristics of these individuals, like Allah says, most people don't serve him without being mushrik. But there's a verse in the Quran where Allah says, is telling the messenger, I believe, and as a result of the community in his presence there, it's not for you to follow the funeral or stand behind them. When it has become clear to you that they are inmates of the fire. You see, when it's become clear to you, so that's now, the person now has died already, and died in a state that he lived as a disbeliever. It's clear, you can't get clearer than that. So now you don't deal with that. But prior to that, people can change. People have a way of changing, you see. And so I think that's kind of open. But I know, Alan, I know you personally, you are kind of eager to stamp people as mushriks, as this, as that. But maybe the next person is not so quick to jump like that. And I would caution that attitude also in general.
See, it's a very, I mean, we don't know what's in the hearts of people. We really don't know. We need to have a full understanding of the concept of kufr, the full understanding of the concept of kadhib, the full understanding the concept of iman, shirk. These are serious things that the Quran talks about. Will I be dealing with someone who, in my opinion, this definition applies on him? Of course we do. We do. I mean, even here in North America, right? I mean, we don't have to go far. That's why the ibadah in Surah Al-An'am, the 9 commandments, are the ones that are essential for good governance. The rest are not for us to monkey with, to play with, in my opinion. Whether a person is kafir or mushrik or that. But we need to, the idea is that we need to elevate our guidance. We need to understand the religion. I mean, if we point out concepts that some people might be practicing, it is for the benefit of all, not for the purpose of polarization. I mean, we really have to be cautious. Having said that, that doesn't mean we dilute everything. Everything is diluted. Everything is happy, lovey-dovey. No, there are certain things that are important to understand. But I maintain we should, if we label people, I would label them based on my understanding of what the label implies. I cannot label them based on an absolute fact, okay? And I challenge anyone here, take a survey outside any masjid on Jum'ah prayer and ask people define what kufr is and see what you get. I mean, I doubt it if you get uniformity. I think you will get a spectrum of answers. So and if we start labeling people, kufr, kafir, what does the definition of who?
Thank you for that.
Anyone else has a question, please? Anyone? Question, comment?
If no one, there is something that I missed to say. I didn't say it, and it's important. According to the Hadith framers, the Prophet said in Sahih Muslim, do not write anything about me or on me. And whoever write anything except the Quran.
Mhm.
Erase it, he says, continues, and speak about me, speak, حدثوا عني, speak about me without any hesitation.
Mhm.
Okay? So look, there's a difference. Speak about me, but don't write. Okay, now, again, I don't subscribe to the hadith at all, okay? But this is a hadith that is being trusted or being accepted as a sahih. Now, let's see an-Nawawi. Look how obviously this hadith, what does it tell you? It tells you everything. All the hadith should be tossed in the trash, right? If you believe in this hadith, لا تكتبوا عني. Don't write anything about me. Okay? Now, this is posed a dilemma for the hadith framers, a big dilemma, a serious dilemma. How to get out of it? Okay, so here comes an-Nawawi. An-Nawawi lived, I think, hundreds of years after the Prophet died. Hundreds of years, I think, even after, I don't have the date of an-Nawawi's death, but he's a famous, they call him a famous hadith interpretation scholar. Look, not a hadith scholar, but a hadith interpretation scholar, because there are two famous ones, Al-Asqalani and Nawawi. Okay, so now he said how he wanted to reconcile this. Okay, how did he get out of this? I really be patient because this is important. There he is saying there used to be amongst the companions a big difference in whether to write or not to write the ahadith. فَكَرِهَهَا كَثِيرُونَ. Many of them didn't like to write, and others said it's okay to write. ثم أجمع المسلمون على جوازها. Look, please listen very carefully. Then the Muslims have made ijma' that it is okay to write.
Mm.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I am just 4 lines out of about 15 from what is he saying. I will continue in a second, but let's pause. That's what I keep saying. We should take these things seriously, one line at a time. If there is a flaw in something, we cannot continue further. We cannot. At least my brain cannot. I cannot build a bridge if you give me flawed laws. People will die, the bridge will fall. And that's, by the way, that's what's happening to Muslims, exactly. Look at this. كَرِهَهَا كَثِيرٌ. Look, the Prophet says something, and now he is saying many people didn't like to do that, and some did. Interesting. But at the end he said, but the majority of Muslims decided it's okay to write. In other words, the majority of Muslims decided to go against what the Prophet has said.
Mhm.
And they accuse us of hating the Prophet. Look, they accuse us of hating the Prophet, right? All right. Now, then he goes on. I'm not going to read everything, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Look, towards the end of his explanation, and by the way, this is in the book, anyone who cares to know, Al-Nawawi, the book's title, Al-Minhaj in Arabic. Minhaj meaning, no pun intended, the methodology.
Mhm.
Al-Minhaj.
Mhm.
So this is the Minhaj, okay?
Mhm.
Now you tell me why I went through all this pain to really discover these things. I discovered these things. They were hidden in their books, you
Mhm.
know? Okay, it is worth it to go through over this, but once only. Okay, Qila, look, he at the end says, Qila, it was said. Who says it? Who said it? Qila, you know? Qila. In the hadith al-Nahi, the hadith that I just said, with the i.e. the Prophet said, don't write anything about me, was abrogated. Interesting. Just like that. That hadith was abrogated. Okay? And then he continues. Now, who abrogated it? Who knows? Okay? Who is the people behind qila, those who said? We don't know. Okay? وكان النهي حين خيف, and the discouragement or the ban on writing hadith, he continues, it used to be when they feared, look, listen, that the Quran will be mixed. People will confuse Quran and hadith. They will be confused. Can you believe this nonsense? فلما أمن ذلك, and then when it was guaranteed that there will be no confusion between the two. I mean, what does he mean by that? Earlier there was confusion, later there's no confusion. Okay? أذن في الكتابة. The Prophet said it's okay to write. Okay, provide me with a proof that he said later on it's okay to write. Okay, even if the proof is bogus, even if the proof is fabricated hadith, provide me with one. He provided with none. Okay, so it's really interesting. This is a note that I wrote here, that the words of the Prophet were elevated to wahi. Amazing.
Well,
And
you
then,
have,
look, it was elevated to wahi, and then the wahi was ignored. And how was it ignored? Through the instrument of ijma'. And this is a flawed instrument. It's one of the, remember, I don't know if I said it on your program, but it is the quadrinity that Muslims believe in. We accuse Catholics of believing in the Trinity. Muslims believe in the quadrinity. There are four gods. Four gods. The Christians, I sympathize with them, the Catholics, because they don't believe in three gods, equal gods. They believe in one, a Son, and the Holy Spirit. So it's a bit of a convoluted, difficult concept, but they don't believe in three equal gods. Muslims believe in four equal gods, i.e. the quadrinity, so the Muslim situation is much worse. It's much worse. So they believe in Allah, the legislation, the Amr, al-awamir wa nahi. Tahrim comes from Allah, the Prophet, ijma', qiyas, four. And ijma' is one of them, okay? And here it's invoked. So the ijma' here superseded the wahi.
and you said qiyas also, qisas rather, qiyas. Did you say qiyas?
Qiyas, analogy.
Analogy.
So these are the four gods that the Sunnis believe in. And if you tell me four gods, yes, absolutely, because they believe in that the legislation comes from these four. Okay, so shirk, this is real shirk in my opinion. Okay, because لا يشرك في حكمه أحدا. Now we make the Prophet يشرك في حكمه. جماع, i.e., by the way, ijma' is a vague, elusive concept. They never tell you who made ijma'. They say just ijma'. Shut up and believe it. The majority. Which majority? By the way, the ijma' is a big thing. I wrote a lot about it. It's one of the biggest frauds that had been concocted to really give credence to not the Prophet, not the Hadith, but to the scholars, the so-called scholars, i.e. the Kahana, the priests, and of course the analogy. Of course, who came up with these? Of course, Shafi'i. So I think that Shafi'i was the one who really buttressed the concept of the Sunnah in a big way. And I don't think, and then we go to, I think the brother who asked this question asked me about the political motives. I really believe that the Shafi'i had a big political backing, a huge political backing, because his doctrine is the one that prevailed at a time when you couldn't breathe without the caliph or the Amir al-Mu'mineen or the emperor allowing you to breathe. Just like today, right? Incidentally, I want to mention is that there's a famous Sunni type preacher liked by many millions of people in the Middle East, and he is always projected as a wasati. You know, I think this term is very elusive. Wasati means middle ground, that he is not an extremist to the right or to the left. He look at this wasati, this middle groundedness, if I may say. He says that anyone who does not believe in Sahih al-Muslim and Bukhari is a kafir. You know, so it has gotten to that point. You know, yeah.
Well, good. And now that just goes back now to Alan's point about calling people names and one thing after the other. But look, Allah calls people kafir many times throughout the Quran, but in one specific verse that I like to project all the time is chapter 40, verse 12. Chapter 40, verse 12. Can you pull that up? Chapter 40, verse 12. And look what the qualifications of a kafir is as it narrows down, and that Allah points to the person who has this characteristic as a kafir.
Brother, 40, Ghafir, 40, 12.
Chapter 40, verse 12.
Okay.
Is that it?
ذلكم بأنه إذا دعي الله وحده كفرتم وإن يشرك به تؤمنوا فالحكم لله العلي الكبير. I really think, brother, I really think kafir has to be understood in its context. Kafara in the Mus'haf appears in many places. This in particular here, this is very clear. The one very clear, the one who إذا ذكر اسم الله, let's go وكفرتم إذا دعي الله وحده كفرتم. So this is a type of kufr, but it is not the only one.
Of course
This
not.
is,
No.
Yeah.
But this is a very major, because and I gave that lecture once down in Maryland at one of our conferences, where Allah uses the term wahdahu regarding himself 6 times in the Quran. Wahdahu. Now we take it when we say Allah so and so and so and so. You recite a verse and it says Allah so and so and so. Well, does that mean Allah and someone else, or does it mean Allah by himself? When it says we, us, I, or whatever, are we talking about someone in associated with Allah as a necessity, as a partner? No, Allah makes it clear here by using the word wahdahu that when he alone is called upon or mentioned, the people disbelieve. You see, they disbelieve. You have to have Allah and someone else. Allah and. You have to have Allah and someone else. The average Muslim is not happy mentioning Allah alone. This is why you just said, the people say, we don't like the prophet. We're mad at the prophet. No, we're not mad at the prophet. We're just not associating the prophet with Allah. We're not going to do that.
Yes, brother. Yes, absolutely.
The messenger with Allah.
Your point is well taken. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. I mean, very strong is that here is Allah. He doesn't want to associate anyone with him.
Period.
And period. Exactly. And to bring someone else is kufr, according to
exactly
this.
What it is.
Absolutely. And I want to just
before you go further, just carry it on. But when you bring someone else, the people amanu. They believe now. They only believe this. I'll label the Sunni Muslim, Shia, whoever, whatever group you are, but you only believe, and this is what the Shahadatain does. This double Shahada makes this a requirement to bring that second person in. And that's making what I gave a lecture called the making of a mushrik. the Shahadatain and the making of a mushrik. Everyone today who comes into this fold of this religion, parallel religion, must declare this Shahadatain. And that gives two authorities. It gives two authorities.
Absolutely. The Shahadatain is putting Muhammad on the same level of
Exactly. And so what in the world is going on with that? Every person now who comes innocently wanting to submit themselves to Allah, you make them a mushrik right away. You turn them into a mushrik.
Yeah.
You know, you send your daughter to work, you tell her you're old enough to get a job and all that. And what do you send her out on the strip to prostitute? Is that what you're talking about, going to get a job? You turn her into a prostitute? Well, that's what you're doing when you take the Shahadatain. You're turning people into a mushrik, not believers, not submitters. So anyway, I'm just saying that's a very grave situation there. And I think this is what got Alan so fired up with his idea about mushriks.
Hey, Hamza, I have a question for you. What you just said a minute ago.
Excuse me?
Hey, I have a question for you based on what you just said a minute ago.
Yeah.
Chapter 4, verse 150 says, indeed, those who disbelieve in Allah and his messengers and wish to discriminate between Allah and his messengers and say we believe in some and disbelieve in others, and we wish to adopt a way in between, would the whole Sunni world be included in this?
To make a distinction between the messengers?
Yeah, messenger of Allah. Would the whole Sunni world be included in this?
Well, that depends on what distinction you're talking about. I don't see the Sunnis making any necessary distinction between messengers other than that when they talk about some, they'll say sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and when they talk about some, they'll say alayhi salam or something like that. Why would you make that distinction? Who told them that? I don't know, but I don't think they make any necessary distinction other than saying that someone limited to their own people and Muhammad was for the whole of mankind.
Well,
I don't see that much of a distinction that they make there.
The fact the Sunnis say that Prophet Muhammad had a hadith and sunnah to follow, which is obviously not true. This is what I meant, because they're the ones who are claiming this, the Sunnis.
But brother, you're referring to verse 150?
Yeah.
But verse 150, but it starts with الَّذِينَ يَكْفُرُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَرُسُلِهِ. How could that apply to those who make kufr in Allah wa rusulihi? That's the beginning of the verse.
Yeah. Well, I meant based on that the Sunnis are saying that Allah revealed Quran, Hadith, and Sunnah, which He didn't. So that based on this, they are trying to make a distinguish between the two. Allah has a Quran and Muhammad has a Hadith and Sunnah. That's what I meant to say. They're the ones trying to separate the two.
But that doesn't apply. I mean, that's a different thing. But that doesn't apply to the so-called Sunnis, because this starts with الَّذِينَ يَكْفُرُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَرُسُلِهِ. وَيَقُولُونَ, and then they go further, and then they declare that we believe in some and we deny the existence of others. So I really don't think that not to say that the Sunnis don't have any problem, but we have to be really
we gotta lighten them, give them some breathing room for a minute.
Well, for some reason I see it differently, but then again, I'm not saying I'm right. I just see it differently. That's all.
And
but brother, sure. But of course, but the beginning of the verse, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَكْفُرُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَرُسُلِهِ وَيَقُولُونَ. So Allah starts with those who don't yakfur billah. In other words, they're denying, they're covering the truth, the Allah and the Rasul.
Well, that's
Anyway.
exactly what Sunnis are doing. Exactly my point.
You mean they deny that they are making kufr in Allah and his messengers?
Well, with the fact that Allah says the Quran is sufficient, and then Sunnis tell us, no, you need a teacher, which is Muhammad, doesn't that gives you any hint?
I would see that as people outside of the Islamic community. In other words, I would point to the Jews, the Bnei Israel, if I wanted to find somebody guilty of that. They accept Moses and they reject Muhammad. Yeah.
No, it's very, very well put. I understand.
The Bnei Israel, the people who call themselves Jews and Christians, they're the ones who are guilty of that more so than Sunnis or someone else. You see, they're the ones who read. Look, what Christian and what the Jew accepts Muhammad as the messenger of Allah?
Nobody.
So they're the ones, but they accept Moses, right? They accept Abraham, Noah.
Yep.
So they're guilty of this verse.
I mentioned this verse about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when I was in a Sunni mosque that I went for about 12 years. And they actually, those Sunnis, they used this verse against me, saying I'm the one who discriminate between Allah and the messenger, making the distinction between the two. They accuse me of with this verse.
Well, you satisfied with that, Alan? You have anything else, or you want to?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Both of you.
Anybody else have a question for Brother Omar regarding his topic today?
I have just one, if it's okay. This is Brother Billy from Texas.
Very good, Billy.
How's it going? Salam alaikum, Omar. First of all, thank you for giving the presentation. I really appreciate that. And all praise belongs to Allah. I think that on the topic of Hadith, it's one of the strongest presentations I've ever seen. I think you did a great job of showing the unreliability of the Hadith texts. My question was regarding Sahih Muslim 3004, the Hadith you went over earlier today, where it says that Abu Sa'id Khudri reported that Allah's messenger said, allegedly, do not take down anything from me, and he who took anything from me except the Quran, he should erase that and narrate from me, for there's no hesitation in it. And he who attributed any falsehood to me and Hammam said, I think he also said deliberately, he should in fact find his abode in hellfire. My question here, because this is a pattern that I see in lots of hadith, even though this hadith is considered sahih or authentic, Abu Sa'id Khudri says in this hadith here that I think he also said deliberately. So it seems that even though the hadith itself is categorized as being sahih or authentic, Abu Sa'id Khudri seems to be admitting that he's not really sure what Allah's messenger said here. He says, I think he said deliberately. I'm not sure he said deliberately, but I think he said deliberately. And that's a pattern I've seen through many hadith.
Good point.
Does that because of course I'm not an Arabic speaker, and your Arabic is entirely superior to mine. But even in Arabic, does that point there still stand? And my question is, because this pattern seems to exist in hadith, where there seems to be uncertainty even within the narration itself, but the narration is still somehow authentic.
You raise a very, very good point. There's much more than this. This is a minute example. In fact, you pointed out the hesitancy in Abu Hammam in let me see, in قال حمام, not Abu Hammam. أحسبه قال متعمدا, and he is, at least in this hadith, the word متعمدا, meaning intentionally, refers to that my interpretation, it makes a lot of sense to me, it refers to the last phrase of this hadith. So it doesn't refer to the earlier stage. It doesn't make sense to say that the word intentionally refers to the first part of the hadith, the first phrase, but the second, which doesn't change much except the severity of the punishment whoever fabricates a hadith. But I think your big question is the what should I say, the vagueness in a hadith. Absolutely, brother. I mean, if we want to get into it, we can dedicate a 5-hour discussion into the vagueness, into the errors, into the playing with words, into so many things, and there are also many ahadith that are not about the prophet, like hadith as-salah, those, the ones about salah. They included them in Sahih al-Bukhari, but they are not what is claimed the prophet said. This is a big chunk, by the way, of a hadith. Someone else said, I saw the prophet doing so and so and so, or I think, or someone said so and so and so, and we believe this is so and so. So there's a lot of vagueness, a lot of mercuriality, a lot of inaccuracies, a lot of imprecision, and you just actually pointed out one of them. And believe me, brother Billy, I mean, it doesn't take a genius, you don't really need to be very well versed in Arabic to find these problems in ahadith. In fact, I'll tell you something interesting. Many ahadith, I documented them, but they're not in front of me. The translations to English is incorrect. And you know what? I think they've done it intentionally, because they're so embarrassing if you were to translate them correctly.
Wow. That's really eye-opening as well, brother. I appreciate that, because that's what I wanted to confirm there. I wanted to confirm that, to me, the contradiction that I've always seen, even within just this one hadith on its own, other than the obvious contradiction that it's telling not to write down anything other than the Quran, but that contradiction between it being labeled authentic, but then the person that's narrating here, the Abu Sayyid Khudri, it sounds like he's unsure himself. And so Abu Sayyid Khudri was saying, I think he also said deliberately, but then in modern times today, we've labeled it authentic as if it's something he definitely said and that we are sure of.
Brother, that's an excellent point. You really raised an excellent point, because you're saying that there is uncertainty about part of the hadith according to the narrator.
Right.
So the question is, if he admits there's uncertainty, why should I take the whole hadith as certain?
Exactly that. If he himself was uncertain, then how can we label it authentic today?
Absolutely. And I chose this hadith to show the falsehood in the methodology, not that I believe in the hadith in the first place. Now I have to say, I am sure that there are many ahadith that were said by the Prophet. I'm sure. I mean, he was an important man, and people must have caught some of the things he said. Number one, I believe that those ahadith are extremely short. Number two, and I'll give you some examples. And number two, I believe that they have nothing to do with religion. They're good statements, just like a leader, a prophet, who would say good things to his society. For instance, taking care of the neighbor. It's not part of religion. Suppose I want to bring meat and let the smell go everywhere and not share anything with the neighbor. I can do that, but it is a matter of tact to be careful not to offend the sensibilities of the neighbors. Things of that nature, I believe in them. That I don't have doubt that he could have said those, and these are easy, like one-liner, sometimes just 2 words. sometimes some ahadith are just 2 words, and I don't see any problem with those being attributed to the Prophet, but I don't take them as religion at all.
Yeah,
Can I add something?
Yeah,
So,
please.
What I wanna add is throughout the Quran, Allah criticized Prophet Muhammad in a capacity as a prophet for making errors. Like in 66:1 says, "O Prophet, why do you prohibit what God made lawful, seeking the approval of your wives? Allah made something halal, he's making it haram." Throughout the Quran. So if Allah criticized Prophet Muhammad throughout the Quran, why would you follow something 200 years later? Nothing but problems. Here's the example that Allah doesn't want you to follow Prophet Muhammad. He wants you to follow the messenger in a message.
No, that's granted, brother. That's granted. I mean, we put that subject to rest. That is granted, absolutely. I invite you to see some other discussions that I participated in. That is very clear, you know, that imitating the Prophet, imitating and following what the Prophet used to say is detrimental to our life because he lived in a different time and space. So it is not increasing our religiosity to follow what the Prophet did. He did it suitably for his time and space, for the socio-economic conditions. So I'm not a better person if I were to imitate what he used to do. That's the Prophet. Of course, the messenger is a different story, you know. So that issue I think we put it to rest completely, you know. Some people ask me a lot, you know, you're telling me that the Muhammad was just a postman. Absolutely, he was just a postman. The postman is we said it before, the postman is a very trustworthy person. You know, I got you know, I live in Canada and I got the tax revenue IRS notice. Of course, we get scared whenever we get those, but he delivered me a very important tax message from the U.S. government. You know, so we trust the postman to deliver the message. There are, you know, there are a lot of emotional package that many Muslims have attached. It took years to build this emotional package. You go to the famous masajid in the world and you see the name of Muhammad inscribed in the same font and same size as the name Allah. I mean, this is just by itself, it tells you that there's something wrong. As someone put it very nicely, Christianity, the center of Christianity was shifted to the body of Jesus, of Isa. Muslims shifted the center of Islam to how Muhammad lived and how Muhammad behaved. And this is what truly petrified Muslims. It didn't petrify Islam. Islam is Islam, but it petrified the growth of Muslims. Muhammad, how he dressed, how he walked, how he sat. I mean, I can tell you stories ad nauseum. I mean, how he stood in the masjid, how he sat. There's a according to the hadith framers, if you lean with 2 hands like this, you're sitting back and leaning 2 hands, then you're committing something negative. You have to lean with 1 hand. I mean, it's bizarre. It's bizarre to that magnitude of the travesty has reached that level. Notice in depictions of Jesus, the depictions of Jesus in movies, in paintings, what are the depictions showing? A man with long hair and the robe, right? Do Christians follow that nowadays? Do they say we have to look like Jesus the way he does? They don't. They're smarter, irrespective of what Christianity is all about. They're following the essence of that message. Okay, Nobody wants to grow hair or beard or rope like we are. In fact, you know, a major alim said that if you don't let beard grow, you are sinful.
Mm.
Really, you know, what they wear, these priests, these kahana, the dresses they wear. I want to challenge you. What do you think Abu Jahl? What did he wear? Same,
Mhm.
right? Abu Jahl wore the same dress that these people that the Prophet used to wear. That was the common dress,
Mhm.
right? The same, you know. What's his name? Those who fought the Muslims in the Battle of Badr were wearing the same dresses, right? So we really centralized Islam around the Prophet, his behavior, his character, how he behaved with the people around him, and we did it selectively. Notice, selectively. In certain things, because they say that the Sunnah is what the Prophet is reported to have done, what he has done. Okay. Well, the Prophet used to fight with the bow and arrow. In fact, they claim that he has a hadith in which he said, "Teach your kids how to fight with the bow and arrow." How come we're not doing it right now? Why do we buy tanks from the US?
Mhm.
Why should we fight? So it had been done selectively. Dear brothers and sisters, the methodology is incredibly flawed, and it doesn't take a genius. It doesn't take a genius to figure out. It takes elementary grade school level background to find out that there is no such thing as a methodology, nor there is such thing as science behind the structure of the so-called hadith and sunnah. There is none. And you know what? The more you delve in it, you'll find a lot of material. You start laughing. The more you delve into these volumes and these compendia of books, the more you start seeing contradictions. You know, there are ahadith about you know, when to have intercourse and when not to have, and they're contradictory. They're completely contradictory, you know, and they're grouped under one chapter in Al-Bukhari or one chapter in Al-Muslim. So now I just want to say that emotionalism overcomes many people. I just came back from a trip to the Middle East, and I love to discuss these things with people there to see their attitude. Emotionalism is so dominant. I mean, you come to a logical point and they just jump back. But you want me to leave this? Do you want me to not to believe in the hadith? You want me to it will, you know, I was extremely enthusiastic and seeing rapid change. Change is coming. More and more people are beginning to at least listen. Okay. In the past, people used to fight back. More and more people are calming down and listening, and at least listening, because the onus on the people who have the right argument to explain it in a logical way. You know, and please, I mean, if I were to take, I do believe in the sunnah of the Prophet. The sunnah of the Prophet is that he was patient. That's the sunnah of the Prophet. You know, he came up with something that everybody opposed. Everybody opposed. That's number one. Number two, and this is from the Mus'haf, by the way. And number two, they offered him everything. What's wrong with you, Muhammad? I mean, we can satisfy you with anything you want. He said, no, I know the truth. I will not change. Okay. And then Allah told him, don't kill yourself. Allah is the one who gives hidayah. Just balligh, balligh. So I think this is the sunnah that I like to get from the Prophet, is these three things. And with repeated balagh, بلغ, بلغ, and not, you know, not being contradictory, people eventually say it makes sense, and there will be a momentum building. And I can, alhamdulillah, you know, see it. We, you know, some of the people who don't believe in the Sunnah, I have to admit, are a bit aggressive. You know, some of them, they believe, you know, my way or the highway, this is the right thing. But really, the Sunnah of the Prophet is that if we believe in something is right, ادعوا إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة. We call to the path of our Lord in with wisdom and logic, and good manners. You know, I just very briefly, I want to share with you something very short anecdote. Someone told me I was in the Middle East. In the Middle East, in Jordan, people don't put seat belts. They think that it's like you're sissy if you put a seat belt. You're not courageous. You know, it's typical. So I sat next to a friend of mine who was Jordanian, and he was putting the seat belt. You know what he told me? He said, I said, interesting, very rare here, people put seatbelts. He said, a police one time stopped me. He said, I never believed in it, but a police one time stopped me. And he said he should have given me a ticket, but he didn't. He kneeled inside the window. He said, I really care about you. You want to live comfortably. You want to go back to your family. He said he talked to me smoothly. He said, please put the seatbelt. And he did not give him a ticket. He said, since that day, I've been putting the seatbelt. He said, if he gave me the ticket, probably I would have cursed him, cursed my life, because this guy is not well off, and I would have never been put a belt again. So I think the way the persistence and the focus as that program, remember the program about the Africans, I think it was called the Africans, or it was called Eyes on the Prize. Brother Hamza, remember this
Eyes
program?
on the Prize was a series, and then Shaka Zulu was a series also.
Yeah. So I think we should keep the eye on the prize, you know, and grow above any sectarian influences and personal agitation. May Allah guide us all.
Yeah, Omar, I have a question for you.
Yes, brother.
Do you believe in some of the hadith that the Sunnis follow, or you reject all of them, the whole 6 books?
It's not I reject them. Some of them could have been things that the Prophet said, but the hadith has no relevance to Islam. There's no relevance to Islam. The Islam is embodied by the message, you know, by the message. That's it. It's not rejecting. You know, to frame it as rejecting. You know, I'm rejecting something that I don't know if it's there or not. That's elusive construction. You know, in my book, brother, if you haven't had a chance, I humbly request that you get a copy. It's available on Amazon. Chapter 8 lays the foundation.
Title of the book?
There's an, I'll show it if I may.
Very good.
Muslims' greater challenge, choosing between tradition and Islam. It's available on Amazon for about $20. In chapter 8, I do lay the ground for the irrelevance of hadith in religion. I mean, I try to do it as logically and as correctly as possible. So Allah never asked us to follow the hadith, never. We follow the messenger in the message only. So that we've put that to rest. But if you want to go into the details, it's available in this book, chapter 8, in careful detail, where I went over the word ta'a, uswa, ittabi'u, all of these important words that the hadith framers use to justify their case. I took each one by one and showed that that it does not support their claim. Okay, so the imagine, I mean, Allah sent a religion which is hidayah. Allah did not send a religion to make our life hell, so that I would search in 40 volumes of Al-Asqalani interpretation of ahadith that were transmitted by meaning. Imagine 40 volumes of interpretation of hadith that were transmitted by meaning. So Al-Asqalani, if they were transmitted by meaning, he could have been way off in interpreting them. Okay, so
can I follow up?
Please.
How do you think Prophet Muhammad found out about, let's say, Abraham?
Whatever he wanted, whatever I cannot say. Well, the only thing I would say is that Allah told us and our prophet about Abraham through the message.
Exactly. And that's how me and you find out about what Muhammad did. Simple as that. Because history may or may not be true.
I'm sorry? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, brother. And I did talk about this in my book. What Allah wanted us to know about the prophets and about our prophet is documented in this book. Nothing more, nothing less. Nothing. Everything else, I don't believe in it. Sirat ibn Ishaq, I'm sorry. I don't believe a single thing in it. Sirat ibn Hisham, you know Ibn Ishaq, the first seerah of the Prophet, who lived 80. Ibn Ishaq lived 80 years after the Prophet. You know, it was a commissioned project. The emperor at that time told him, here's a big sum of money and write a big history book for my son. So it was a financed project. It was not a philanthropic gesture by Ibn Ishaq. If you read the biography that Ibn Ishaq wrote, it's full of a lot of nonsense that even Ibn Hisham. Look, Ibn Hisham lived way after the Ibn Ishaq. So who you would trust more? You should trust Ibn Ishaq, right? Why do Muslims trust Ibn Hisham? Because Ibn Hisham came and started with the body, with the material that Ibn Ishaq wrote, and started removing a lot of embarrassing stuff. But who should have more credibility? Ibn Ishaq, because he lived way earlier. But it's the other way around. Why? Because Muslims were embarrassed. What we need, you know, the strength, the message is embodied in the Mus'haf. The Musdaqiyya, you know, the honesty of the Prophet has nothing to do with me believing the message.
Yeah, see, the reason I'm asking you is because if Allah told me in the Quran to be good to my parents, I don't need history to tell me that may or may not be true. Allah already told me. So that's another reason why we don't need a hadith, because Allah already told me what to do and what not to do.
And Allah also, because this Quran is for all times, Allah gave us the broad concepts, the broad conceptual frame for us to lead a good life without being specific to things that have to do with time and space. Absolutely. Otherwise, it will not work. And the only one capable of that, the only one that is Allah. There's no one else is capable of that, to give us broad constitutional framework that will work for. And you see, that's when people say that chopping hands, it is, you know, some people say Allah said we should chop the hand of the thief, and I argued before in programs there's no such thing. But some people try to get away from it by saying that, well, for these times it will not work, so we have to stop that aspect of the relation. That's very dangerous. That's extremely dangerous. That doesn't work. The Quran applies for all times, but it is extremely broad, gives you a broad conceptual frame. When we petrify things, you know, it is true that some people say I sympathize with them. You want to bring us 1400 years back, they accuse Muslims. They are absolutely correct. There are many Muslims who want to send us 1400 years back. Absolutely, absolutely. You know, from the way we behave to the way we brush our teeth with the miswak, to the way we eat, it has to be with your hand. Really, now we have fancy utensils. Why should I eat? If one wants to eat with his hand, fine. But don't tell me it's a religion. You know, so there was, with this hadith, it locked us. It locked us. There's no freedom anymore. There's no freedom. You know, you have to have a manual. A manual, what to do. Turn left, turn right, turn into the masjid this way, go to the masjid. And that deprived us from the big spirit, the explosive revolutionary power of Islam. Absolutely. It can find us, you know. Look at this, brother. You know, Islam is about ibadah, period. What is ibadah? Ibadah is what? Is literally freedom. Literally. If you want to translate what ibadah is the freedom to worship or the freedom to disobey. The freedom to obey or the freedom to disobey. That's ibadah. Now, look at the shuyukh. Look how the religion has been diverted. The priests, the Kahana, they make good money throughout the year. You know, before Ramadan, they're telling everybody, you know, prepare for Ramadan. You know, start doing this and that. In Ramadan, they came up with this fiqh of Ramadan. My goodness, Allah says few words in Ramadan. Fast, because in my opinion, my interpretation is physiologically good for us, period. He did not dwell on it much. He did not make a big issue about it. You know, other people were, Allah suggested to previous people to fast, so he's suggesting so that we benefit. That's it, end of it. Okay, so now they have made a business of lectures about fiqh of Qur'an and this and that, fiqh of Ramadan. Ramadan is over. Oh, brother, you know, they'll give you lectures about the benefit of Shawwal, fast 6 days of Shawwal, and then they start preparing for Hajj. There's occasions that they make money off of. You know, there's a lot of money-making business from this religion. Tell me, where are the priests who talk about injustice around the world? None. They're silent, right? Why they're not talking about liberty, freedom? Freedom is the concept that people kill themselves for, and the priests are silent, completely silent. You know, look what happened in Yemen. The slaughter in Yemen. The cities were bombed to smithereens by the Saudi aircrafts. The shuyukh and the priests and the kahana in North America are quiet. Why did I say North America? Because I don't blame the ones back there to be quiet, because they will be thrown in jail. Okay, so Allah doesn't tell you throw yourself in jail. But here, when we have everything and we can talk about everything comfortably, they're quiet, right? Injustice around the world, they're quiet, nowhere to be found. You know, what is this? There's something fundamentally flawed, and to justify their silence, you know, there's a body of ahadith. They call them ahadith al-imara. Hadith al-imara, I'm almost certain they were written during the Umayyad period, because they tell you that if you find something wrong by the governor, shut up, go inside your house and be quiet. See, these are the ahadith. They call it the hadith al-imara. Okay, so they could justify anything they wanted.
Okay, Brother Omar, I think we're going to wrap it up here. We certainly appreciate the time that you've given us. We appreciate the lecture. We appreciate everybody who tuned in to listen, and those who participated with the questions. We anticipate that the video would be posted and viewed by many other people, and we'll invite those people to watch and to post their comments on the YouTube channels. I suggest that everyone, or I invite everyone who claims to follow the Qur'an to subscribe to everyone's channel. Everyone that's advocating this Qur'an, go and subscribe to their channel, to my channel, to Brother Omar's channel, to Brother Bill's channel, Brother Allen's channel, whomever. Just subscribe to their channel, like and subscribe so that they can produce content, that they can stay aboard. Somebody's going to look at a channel somewhere else that's not going to see something on my channel, and it might make a difference in their life. And it's simply because you took the time to post it on your channel. So do that. It'd be a game changer for a lot of people. Again, let me just remind everyone that we have the conference coming up on the 8th of June. And we posted the ad up in the beginning of the video. You can go there and look at it and get that information. And those who would like to participate can come in person. We hope to be Zooming that whole program, have that whole program on Zoom. So we'll have all of that meeting available for those who would like to enjoy what we do there. Let me just leave on a verse that I had here, chapter 9 of the Qur'an, chapter 9, verse 33. I think it fits right in with the topic that's we've shared today. Chapter 9, verse 33. Allah talks about those who desire to put out the light of Allah, his light, with their mouths. And Allah will allow nothing except the perfection of his light, though the disbelievers are adverse. And this is what we have in this body of a hadith and fiqh and sunnah and all of this business, people's mouths, what they have said. And it goes totally against what Allah calls his light in chapter 5, verse 15 and 16, where Allah talks about a light and a clear book, with thereby he guides with that to the Sirat al-Mustaqim. So what they want to put out is the light of this Qur'an alone. They want to put that out. They want to water it down and bring in a second source and to establish whatever it is that they have of this parallel religion and the so-called priests and rabbis and monks and all of them who profit thereby. So that tells me that this deen has to be defended with the mouth as well. So we have to, and so I'm preparing to talk at the conference on the topic of answering the call of Allah and the making of a da'i. Answering the call of Allah and the making of a da'i. I think that we need to focus more on becoming da'is. And Brother Omar talked about the people who don't speak about the freedoms that, the atrocities that are being perpetrated on humanity throughout the world. We just silently let them go by. There's no Muslim learned people at the UN like Malcolm X used to go there and talk about not just civil rights, but human rights, and one thing after the other. Where are the Muslims that are there advocating that cause in that arena there? So we have to now become in our own sphere, when we have the internet here, so we can reach far greater territory now. Da'is and people who call to the way of Allah and help establish this light of Allah. That Allah assures that will be done with or without us. So I'd like to leave on that note. Brother Omar, we thank you for that good, excellent presentation and your patience and your insight into the topic that you present. We're looking forward to having you back again at whenever you like. As you see, we don't put pressure on you here. You have the time that you need. So prepare something for another time. Hopefully that we had an open mic a few weeks ago and people tend to like that. So I think we'll have that coming up again. There's other brothers I've been reaching out to, and if Brother Al Moses, if you hear this call out to you, I'm trying to get in touch with you. And then I think someone asked me to see if you have WhatsApp. And so maybe we can communicate, because I'd like to touch base with you. There's some other brothers that and sisters that I've reached out to, and we're planning to coordinate some efforts with them. We want to bond our efforts together. We're not trying to be stars here. We're not jockeying for positions and who's the star of the show. It's only the truth that matters, and that's what we're about. So we want to put our efforts together, so when we stand before Allah, we have done a good job in trying to establish this Deen Darul Islam. So with that, if there's nothing else, I'd like to bid everybody salam, and until the next time we meet, may Allah reward us all for our efforts.
Could I just make one comment, please? I would
Yes,
like to say thank you for
can,
the
always, yes. Go ahead.
thanks for the lovely talk, Dr. Omar. I was just surprised, which I never thought of it this way, when you said that the Sunnis follow 4 gods, which made a lot of sense to me. I never thought of that, and I think I appreciate that statement quite a bit.
Very good.
Thank you. And I stand by that.
And I support that as well.
I never thought of it that way, but yeah, that made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.